The Age of the Mecha, Fists That Shatter Stars. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 276 Bombardment. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Flames flickered behind the divine mechas, like fireworks shooting into the sky, with long shrieks. More than 60 mechas were surrounded, but they were still forced to escape. Everyone also witnessed the power of an SS-class mecha. When they were chasing, they were shocked. On the public channel, Guangzi quickly issued remote control instructions to command a lunar fortress to attack and intercept. Although there was also a federal deputy minister Zhao He present, the command power still fails steadily on Guangzi. Commander He, a reminder, Commander Zhang is blocked on the left waist slot of this SS mecha. During the pursuit, Li Yu reminded him. Guangzi was slightly stunned. Are you sure? Is it your previous ability to detect traces? Yes. I can guarantee that it is there. Okay. After a quick conversation, Guangzi's command to intercept the lunar fortress also changed to prevent Zhang Shengfang from being injured by mistake. At this moment, the mechas were visibly pulled away by the noseless mecha. Outside the clear sky, more than 60 divine mechas flew into the turbulent layer one after another. Due to the difference in acceleration ability, they were gradually divided into 3 speed sequences. The violent whistles that were enough to shake the heaven and earth gradually moved away from the people on the ground who were looking up at the sky. Outside the ruins of the war group, the buildings outside the city had cracks visible to the naked eye, and the casualties were also not light. Fortunately, the construction level of cities on the earth was very high and the defense was good, so there was no large-scale collapse, causing more serious damage. There were already artificial mecha troops rushing to rescue. At the same time, the lunar fortress became active. Crack! The fortress, which was like a hedgehog and deeply pierced by super long gun barrels, was mobilized from all over. There were not many masters left here, but there were also 2 high-level heavenly mechas and more than a dozen B-level and C-level mechas. This amount of troops seemed to be completely insufficient to intercept SS-level mechas in space. But in fact, there were still a large number of long-range divine weapons hidden on the lunar fortress. As long as there were enough divine cores, it could be launched. Some do not even need a divine nucleus, and can automatically convert the 3 energies of wind, fire, and thunder into divinity. However, such equipment is still a minority. To drive the various long-range divine weapons of the lunar fortress, various divine nuclei above level A are still needed. This is also the other function of the divine nucleus besides assisting cultivation. However, long-term use is easy to damage the nucleus that can infinitely extract divinity, so each long-range divine weapon has a cooling time to prevent excessive extraction and permanent damage to the divine nucleus. Only divine mecha can achieve non-destructive development of the divinity inherent in the divine nucleus. At this moment, one by one, the gun barrels moved, and under the guidance of the coordinate information provided by the AI system, they found the target. Then, fire. In an instant, outside the lunar fortress, one after another violent flashes of light burst out. Along with the flashes, these divine energy cannons gathered into a group like a rainstorm in a violent wind, pouring out all at once. Soon, with the bombardment of this massive divine energy cannon, the noseless mecha that flew out from the surface of the blue earth had to stagnate and adjust its direction. These divine energy cannons are guaranteed to be triggered by A-level nuclei, and their strength is extraordinary. Moreover, they are the assets accumulated by humans for many years, and the number is astonishing, so their power is naturally fierce. No matter how strong the noseless mecha is, it is obviously impossible to ignore this batch of concentrated shooting. Soon, countless divine energy cannons were connected in the surrounding space. One was slightly weaker, and the back immediately connected. In this way, a dense interception energy network was immediately formed, which tightly blocked noseless mecha. The noseless mecha immediately turned again, and began to fly away from the direction perpendicular to the Earth. Obviously, he also saw the flaws of this interception network. As long as it hides on the back of the Earth, no matter how much the moon fortress shoots, it will not be able to shoot over. After all, the firing speed of the divine energy cannon is generally above 0.1 light speed, and it will not be easily captured by the Earth's gravity. The most likely outcome is to fly out of the Earth's gravitational circle. If you want to bypass the back of the Earth, The firing speed must not be fast. But if the firing speed is slowed down, how can you stop the noseless mecha? Immediately, the noseless mech turned its back to the lunar fortress, with flames flashing behind it, and flew away quickly. It was about to fly to the back of the Earth and completely escape the interception net. At this moment, a dark ray divine energy cannon suddenly shot out from the ozone layer. This cannon had sufficient time to accumulate, and a very strong total amount of divinity was brewed. It quickly slashed in front of the noseless mech like a sword, causing its forward movement to pause slightly. The noseless mech looked down, his vision penetrated the clouds, and found that the one who fired this cannon was the guy mech that impressed him before. Damn it, why is it this little guy again? How could a mere divine energy cannon intercept me in advance? The resurrected person was furious. But before he could start the action, he saw more than 10 divine energy cannons shooting from various angles in the ozone layer. It seemed to have predicted his stagnant action of driving the noseless mech in advance. Boom. 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 In an instant, in this thin semi-vacuum, the noseless mecha was directly hit by more than 10 divine energy cannons. At the last critical moment, a circular divine shield flashed outside the noseless mecha, blocking the more than 10 divine energy cannons. Obviously, the last divine energy cannon that was chasing was hastily fired and had not yet brewed enough power. But this moment of delay was enough for Li Yi and his group. In a moment, in the vacuum environment where the noseless mecha stayed, dozens of divine mechas gathered from all directions, and they were about to stop the noseless mecha again. The divine energy artillery network outside the lunar fortress was launched in disorder, which is not bad, but those artillery attacks just now were definitely achieved by predicting my route in advance. Among this group of people, who can do this? Is he Guangzi, or is it the Gaia Mecha that can accurately stop me several times? That Mecha is so weird, and it can also use such a brilliant method to remove my power. It must be some hidden human strongest master who is controlling this A-level Mecha and wants to trick me. The thoughts of the resurrected person flashed quickly. He knew that if this continued, he would not be able to escape the encirclement of humans with his current strength that had not yet fully recovered, and he would definitely be bombarded by the Mecha. In terms of physical strength, he can compare to the level of S-level Mecha now. If the noseless Mecha was destroyed, he knew he would definitely lose. Even if I get seriously injured, I must kill those two masters with the ability to predict in advance. He came to this conclusion at the first moment. He no longer fled, but opened up the divine shield and, facing the first wave of divine energy cannon fire, he rushed towards Guangzi's Thunder Mech. Chapter 277 Semi-God Skills. The Thunder King Mech was the first to be targeted by the noseless mech. If I hadn't fully recovered, why would I have to endure the anger of these low-level creatures? After dealing with Guangzi, I'll deal with that Gaia Mech. The Resurrector was determined not to hold back. Even if it meant a sharp drop in recovery speed, he had to kill the two key targets. This noseless mech directly activated his demigod trick, the Great Avicii Hell. In the sky above the azure earth, layers of phantom giant shadows piled up like mountains suddenly burst out. The phantoms performed a magnificent and colorful picture, wrapping up the surrounding mechas. This is 1,000 ghosts holding banners and passing through the floating world, and starving people and withered bones walking in the world. The sky and the earth are stained with blood, broken bodies and limbs, all things are declining, and there is grief everywhere. Countless tall mecha phantoms like evil ghosts crush the phantoms of various intelligent creatures like ants, making various mechanical touch roars. For a time, these evil ghost-like mecha phantoms directly blocked the mechas. Mu Xianli's Speed Thunder Mech activated the lightning feature, and the building-cutting knife slashed down into the air, but the mech's phantom lightly avoided it. Zhou Mengheo's Ghost Shadow Mech activated Ghost Flash, trying to flash in front of the noseless mech to intercept it, but was directly interrupted by the phantom in front after the discovery feature was activated, and fired from the flashing state, flying backwards like a cannonball. Lin Wendong controlled the Jupiter mech and activated the Fire Meteor self-sacrifice strike. The thick body of the mech turned into a huge sphere. Under the acceleration of the red divine flame, the speed was maximized, but it was directly stopped by a huge mech phantom and shocked. Chen Kaiongzi controlled the dust mech, erasing the sense of existence. The huge mech moved lightly and passed through a pile of phantom mechas. It was about to break through the heavy barriers, but unexpectedly, a phantom mech suddenly hammered down on the top of its head, hitting the dust mech down. There were other mid-level masters who directly activated the divine energy cannon and fired forward. When the concentrated shots touched the phantom mechas, they seemed to have hit the water waves, and were greatly scattered, spreading to the surroundings, and no longer had the killing power. Tanyaozu activated the co-leading mechas and activated his other heavenly level trick, the co-leading 3-string rotation. This was the trick that he developed after his heavenly level characteristics reached the conceptual level of control, which could affect time and space. Every vibration and rotation of the string was a shattering and reconstruction of time and space, with great power, and could break most conventional time and space skills. In his opinion, the opponent's wave of phantom mechas was not so much a sophisticated combination of skills achieved by using the demigod level characteristics, but rather a helper summoned from a distant specific time and space node. In essence, it was also a move that was not purely killing. Therefore, using time and space to break time and space should work, right? However, when the divinity in the vacuum carried his co-leading 3-string rotation power forward, it seemed to encounter many obstacles, as if falling into the abyss. Unable to move forward. In the cockpit, Tanyaozu's pupils shrank sharply. On the other side, the strongest Zhao drove the fire dragon Mecha, holding an A-level armor-piercing knife, and directly launched his strongest move, the burning dragon red flame slash. In space, a supergiant dragon made of flames that was visible to the naked eye, carrying amazing heat, jumped out of thin air. This giant dragon rushed around, and wherever it passed, the phantom mechas were directly extinguished, directly reflecting the strong characteristics of the strongest level. However, this giant dragon was extremely powerful, but it also attracted a large number of ghost-like phantom mechas, which rushed over, constantly blocking and delaying time. Soon, the scene of the noseless Mecha facing the Thunder King Mecha alone formed on the field. Not only that, there were also several phantom mechas outside the Thunder King Mecha, which quickly squeezed in and compressed the Thunder King Mecha's activity space. He Guangzi noticed something wrong and quickly shouted on the public channel, "This big move will definitely not last long, everyone must do their best to consume the opponent's divinity." As he spoke, the thick arm of the noseless Mecha had already slammed into the Thunder King Mecha. The height difference between the two was huge, and the power difference was far from that. This punch was like an adult hitting a half-grown child. However, He Guangzi had been in battle for a long time, and he was not afraid to face an opponent who was 2 levels higher than him. He just needed to delay the time and wait for his teammates to catch up. Facing the surging punch, He Guangzi did not hesitate and directly launched his own heavenly trick, the Secret Thunder and Hidden Lightning Rush. In an instant, a huge lightning flashed out of the Thunder King Mecha. The surrounding luminosity and the detection systems of various divine mechas were directly interfered by this extremely strong lightning frequency band, as if a large amount of page information was lost. At the same time, the Thunder King Mecha flashed to the right, narrowly avoiding the noseless Mecha, and a tiny lightning in front of it was secretly shot out in the surrounding environment that was as bright as daylight. This shot hit the divine shield in front of the noseless Mecha at once, penetrated directly, and pierced into the opponent's body. In an instant, the resurrectionist in the cockpit seemed to feel the impact of being hit by the rush of information, and his movements paused slightly. Obviously, this move was extremely sophisticated, and contained a large number of interference signals. Even a demigod-level driver could not ignore this move that directly attacked the information load. Not only that, behind this noseless Mecha, there was already a Mecha approaching rapidly. It was the Gaia Mecha. Then, the A-level Zanpakuken stabbed out. This sword contained a millimeter-level subtle force, superimposed with a superkinetic energy from a distance, and the master-level divine control sharpening skills, which was quite sharp. It also seized the opportunity of the noseless Mecha being double interfered by the Thunder King Mecha, and pierced through the thick divine shield at once, accurately hitting the narrow gap between the noseless Mecha shoulder armor and the thick arm, and was about to continue to penetrate inward. However, this resurrector was a super strong after all, and his reaction level was really extraordinary. At the moment of being stabbed, he found the signal of threat in the complex interference information, and instinctively controlled the divinity to shake outward. With this shock, the Gaia Mecha had exhausted its strength and had to retreat immediately. "Damn it, it's this Gaia Mecha again, I will kill you." Which A-class Mecha that entered is so insidious. Even though the noseless Mecha successfully shook off the Gaia Mecha's sudden sword and avoided greater damage, it was still hit. He is no longer the same as usual, and can easily activate the Mecha's immortality. To support the activation of such a high-intensity semigod skill, the great power of Avasi Prison, his consumption is shockingly terrible. Now, if he activates the divinity to repair his body casually, It may be the last straw that causes his semi-god skills to fail. The Resurrector was extremely angry, and he didn't care about the interference launched by the Thunder King Mecha. He directly punched out with high frequency and directly bombarded the Thunder King Mecha in front. In anger, the power of the punches was constantly increasing. For a time, He Guangxi's pressure increased dramatically, and he was surprised. Why is this old thief suddenly so fierce? Chapter 278 Encirclement. He Guangxi was instantly stressed. On the side, the surrounding phantom mechas were also gathering again to intercept the Gaia mechas that were coming quickly. The Gaia mechas had been able to defeat many teammates and bypass many phantoms before, naturally relying on extremely accurate prediction and positioning. Although these phantom mechas were not vulnerable to force, they could resolve various attacks and were extremely fast. But after all, there was only one Resurrector who was distracted and controlling them. Even if it was a demigod-level strong man, it would take a lot of effort to control such a large number of phantoms and distract himself, and he didn't even have perfect skills and tactics. These flaws were naturally easily caught by the Gaia Mecha, which predicted and moved several times, guiding the phantoms to interfere with each other, and this was the first one to kill. However, this was something that only Liu could do. If it was other strongmen, it would still not work. After all, it was a demigod-level combination skill, and the strength was still terrifyingly high. Not just any strongman could catch the gap. Therefore, even though the human side still had several high-level A-class mechas, their strength was only slightly weaker than He Guangxi's Thunder King Mecha. Although they were not weak, they were still easily restrained. In the first half-minute of the war, only the Gaia Mecha could help the Thunder King Mecha. Liu also knew clearly that if the Thunder King Mecha was allowed to withstand the full-strength bombardment of the SS class directly one-on-one, it would not take long for the Thunder King Mecha to be in danger of extinction. Immediately, he directly activated the 3.1 burst skill. Various characteristic powers were launched in an orderly manner. Deep inside the body, the heart was beating, the blood vessels were swollen, and gurgling. In the cockpit, in an instant, the sound of his breathing was like thunder, and white gas rose outside his body. With the pressure brought by the previous high-intensity continuous combat and the stimulation of the real war, his state quickly leaped, and the 44th divine gene was quickly generated. He did not expect that it would appear at the same time as the 3.1 burst skill, and it was actually a brand new divine gene. He could clearly judge that with a great increase in the intensity of the battle and the increase in the strength of the opponent, the increase in combat power brought by a single divine gene, although very high, did not feel as big as the previous one. In the final analysis, his current base was too high, and the change brought by a single gene was still low compared to the overall. However, even so, the 44 genes this time, combined with the several accumulated before, still raised his basic strength by a small level. The superposition of 44 divine genes in his body made his combat power at this moment rise again. At the same time, outside the Gaia Mecha, several Mecha phantoms rushed over at a rapid speed. Liu was not in a hurry. He controlled the Gaia Mecha to first crouch forward, then turned his body sideways, quickly adjusted his body movements, and approached Noseless Mecha. He raised his sword and drew his arm, and flicked it diagonally. The tip of this huge sword, like a jumping bead, leaped rapidly and penetrated a divine shield behind the Noseless Mecha, and was about to pierce the position that was pierced before. At this moment, Liu also discovered that the gap was not repaired quickly, indicating that Noseless Mecha was in a stage of high consumption of divinity. As long as he stabbed again, he didn't believe that Noseless Mecha's semigod skills could continue to stop his teammates. At this time, the Noseless Mecha swung his big hand backwards, obviously also aware of the sword of the cover-pressing Mecha, and quickly blocked the tip of the sword with a faster speed and longer arms. Liu was not surprised by this. He controlled the Gaia Mecha to circle the Zanpakuken, and in turn borrowed this momentum to adjust the direction and stab the tiny gap from another angle. The Noseless Mecha was interfered by the Gaia Mecha, and the suppression of the Thunder King Mecha was obviously slowed down a lot. In response, the Resuscitator was even more furious, and his hatred for the cover-pressing Mecha was even higher. Damn, it's you, the Pretender again, who are you? When he was furious, the Resuscitator decided to adjust the target of his full-strength killing. Thunder King Mecha, He Guangxi and so on, go to hell. The fierce battle lasted only a few seconds. The Noseless Mecha made a prompt decision and turned around quickly. At the moment of turning around, the upper and lower jaws opened slightly, and without any preparation, it directly fired a pure black divine energy cannon. This cannon was as black as ink, and it overlapped with the colors in the vacuum, reaching a mysterious state that was invisible to the naked eye, and quickly stabbed at the Gaia Mecha. This move was particularly concealed, fast, and had little impact on the surrounding light and electromagnetic waves. In an instant, it went straight to the Gaia Mecha. Fast, too fast. Not only fast, but also particularly abrupt. This cannon was obviously also very skillful, and was completely different from the common divine energy cannon firing techniques currently used by humans. In the blink of an eye, this cannon blasted in front of the Gaia Mecha. The divine shield and absolute fluid outside the Gaia Mecha flashed, quickly blocking this cannon. Immediately afterwards, the flames behind the Gaia Mecha flashed, and it jumped up and accelerated. With this leap, the black cannon narrowly passed the lower limbs of the Gaia Mecha, directly scratched the armor on one side of the lower limbs, and continued to fly backwards. In the cockpit, Li Yu's eyes shrank slightly, knowing how thrilling that moment was. Thanks to his soul's secret method, his reaction speed was extremely amazing, and his predictive power was strong. When the upper and lower jaws of the noseless Mecha just lifted, he judged that something was wrong. However, he did not expect that noseless Mecha would have such a fierce power and was extremely hidden. He almost broke out in a cold sweat. He was not surprised by this cannon, but by being hid at such a close distance. In the future, this terrifying SS-class Mecha will definitely seize the opportunity and kill it quickly. However, this move was just a prelude. As the noseless Mecha turned around and killed, the direction of the battle changed again. The noseless Mecha actually chased the Gaia Mecha and flew directly over. However, the noseless Mecha rushed several times quickly, but failed to catch the Gaia Mecha. This movement, even I can be fooled, the Resurrector was secretly shocked and was about to make more efforts. Finally, Zhao He's Fire Dragon mech successfully broke through, killed a large number of phantom mechas, and came close. He Guangxi's pressure suddenly dropped, and he quickly launched his other heavenly trick. Thunder Crash. The Thunder King drew his sword forward, and the divinity at the tip of the sword quickly gathered, and the power of the characteristics was directly stimulated. A lightning bolt suddenly struck from the tip of the sword and shot straight at the noseless mech. For a moment, the three mechas worked together and desperately mobilized their divinity to steadily spread the terrible pressure brought by the noseless mech. Not long after, more and more mechas broke through the restrictions and interceptions of the phantom mechas and besieged them. When the noseless mech's divinity saw the situation, it simply withdrew this semi-divine skill. It fought against the divinity mechas in the core circle with all its strength. In this way, before the other mechas came to surround him, his total amount of divinity quickly recovered to a fairly high level, and his fighting style became more comfortable. However, everyone knew that this battle had reached a critical moment. As long as the mechas in the core battle group could quickly evacuate a gap, the mechas would surround and fire the divine energy cannons, and this battle would be over. The key at this moment was whether Noseless Mecha could help the mechas in the core battle group successfully achieve this goal. Chapter 279 Rescue. In the core battle group, Tanyao Zu's assistant Mecha squeezed in to help several people share the pressure. During the encirclement, the Gaia Mecha was repeatedly targeted by the Noseless Mecha and chased repeatedly. Li Yu's pressure increased dramatically, and he avoided several swift attacks like walking on a tightrope. At least there were S-level and S-level mechas to help share the pressure, so he completed several amazing dodges, which attracted Yi Guangxi's cheers, and then quickly said, "The time is almost right. Be ready to withdraw from the core battle group at any time. Get rid of the battle group at the same time to avoid being caught by this SS-level mecha." Hearing this, the four people in the core battle group were all shocked and their attention was highly focused. Li Yu naturally always maintained the state of self-consciousness, controlling the Gaia Mecha, using the subtle level of power to launch the kite step, and the entire 220-meter-long fuselage was as graceful as a dancing butterfly. With such a performance, even the people on the periphery who were tense and preparing to fire the divine energy cannon could not help but be attracted. They felt that there was such a delicate and artistic kite step in the world. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was natural and contained the truth. However, when they heard Yi Guangxi's order, they knew that the decisive battle was coming, and the formation was filled more and more completely. They saw that the peripheral teams had completely completed the encirclement of the 8 directions. In their upper and lower jaws, the black hole mouth parts had already condensed a dazzling energy ball. At the battle group, the fierce battle seemed to have reached an extreme stage. Suddenly, He Guangzi shouted, "Get out of the way!" Before the words fell, the flames behind the 4 mechas of the core battle group suddenly flashed, pushing with great force. In an instant, the 4 mechas avoided the outside at the same time. The remaining 50 or so mechas that were surrounded fired divine energy cannons at the same time. Since the distance between each machine was within several thousand meters, the divine energy cannon that had been prepared in advance had almost no delay and broke through the distance of several thousand meters and shot at the chest and nose of the noseless mecha. Even if there was a divine shield, so many A-class mechas could shoot at the same time, even a quasi-god level mecha over 1,000 meters would probably be able to break through the defense. What about this 600-meter SS-class mecha? In an instant, the divine shield was broken and directly hit by the divine energy cannon. When everyone was shooting, they naturally tried their best to avoid shooting the divine energy cannon at Zhang Shengfeng, who is located on the left waist slot. The position where the noseless mecha with Zhang Shengfeng was also a little off, so it was difficult to threaten everyone even if they wanted to use it. Therefore, everyone only needed to avoid the waist. Even if the noseless mecha turned around, they would not be afraid of being shot. And if they moved upwards, they only needed to adjust the shooting direction accordingly. Once the encirclement was formed, even if it was an SS-class mecha, it would be difficult to escape if it was alone. Soon, accompanied by a series of extremely violent flames, the noseless mecha seemed to have been directly hit hard. The body that could freely enter and exit the inner layer of the star was gradually damaged. Gradually, it turned into debris and was annihilated in the concentrated fire of various divine energy cannons. A few minutes later, the divine energy cannons that the mechas had been brewing for a long time also gradually failed. When the flame slowly dissipated, the part above the chest of the noseless mecha had already dissipated and was completely destroyed by the concentrated fire of the divine energy cannons, leaving nothing behind. After all, this was the full-strength concentrated fire of 56A level mid-level and above mechas, and the power was extraordinary. However, the 4 people who flew out of the battle group felt that something was wrong. Li Yu said, "An SS-class mecha, it was destroyed so quickly and so thoroughly, isn't it a little too fast? Based on the intensity I felt, even with such a terrifying concentrated attack, the upper body shouldn't be left with nothing left, right?" He Guangzi frowned and said, "It's indeed a little fast." Perhaps the previous semigod skills consumed too much of his divinity, resulting in the resurrectionist having run out of tricks when the divine energy cannon approached. Zhao He said, "There is no point in saying more, let's save Lao Zhang first. Even if this guy can make trouble again later, we don't have to be cautious." As he said that, Zhao He flew down in the fire dragon mecha and came to the half of the fuselage that was left. He reached out to grab the left waist groove and broke it with force. When Zhao Li saw the person hiding on the waist groove, he was relieved and smiled. As Li Yu judged, Lao Zhang is here. Fortunately, Li Yu made an accurate judgment, otherwise we would have killed our teammates by mistake. Everyone felt relieved when they heard the words of Zhao Li, the deputy minister of the Federation. The old man Tan Yaozu also smiled and suddenly shouted, "Li Yu deserves the first credit in this battle." On the public channel, the Cheyenne Wu masters who had witnessed Li Yu's amazing performance many times also shouted, "Humanity has won a great victory. Li Yu deserves the first credit, humanity has won a great victory. Li Yu deserves the first credit." For a while, everyone on the public channel shouted. He Guangzi was also surprised. He didn't expect that Li Yu could convince most of the Cheyenne Wu masters with just this action. Although he expected that with Li Yu's talent, he would definitely stand out very early, and he also believed in his ability very much. He assigned him important tasks several times, wanting to push Li Yu to the top and become a well-known human hero as soon as possible. It was just unexpected that Li Yu's performance in this rescue operation was so outstanding that it was noticed by all the masters. When on Earth, he accurately predicted the movement of the noseless mecha several times and intercepted it in advance, showing a judgment that exceeded the number of people. Intercepting it in the ozone layer in advance was also a merit. When he was separated by the opponent's semigod skills, he was the first to rush to help He Guangzi and prevented He Guangzi, the command center, from being killed. In the end, he was still a member of the core battle group and successfully shared the super attack power of the SS-class mecha. All these things, they are not ordinary evolvers, so they naturally have good eyesight. He Guangzi took stock of it and was somewhat surprised. From the first time I saw him, in just half a year, he has grown to a level that is capable of engaging in such high-intensity combat. This kid is really surprising. Compared with this kid, even Zhang Shengfeng back then is much inferior. Could it be that condensing more and more divine genes before reaching the heavenly rank is the correct evolutionary path for geniuses? But this seems to require much higher soul potential, or does Li Yi have other skills? For a moment, He Guangzi thought about it in his heart, thinking about learning from Li Yi how to condense enough divine genes before reaching the heavenly rank to modify and iterate the heavenly god Mecha plan. On the other side, Zhao He had already sent the unconscious Zhang Shengfeng into the cockpit. Although this is a space environment, Zhang Shengfeng is at least a supreme being, and his physical body is capable of surviving in a vacuum environment. Of course, he has not completed the ship transformation, and the survivability of his pure physical body in space is not particularly superior. In addition, his injuries are unknown, so he really needs to be treated as soon as possible. Come here, some ice gods. Freeze this half of the SS-class Mecha first, to avoid any accidents. Zhao He gave an order, and he also saw Zhang Shengfeng, who he had sent in the cockpit. However, looking at Zhang Shengfeng's appearance, he frowned. Chapter 280 Freeze. Zhao He frowned and looked at Zhang Shengfeng, his heart becoming more and more suspicious. He thought for a moment and chatted with He Guangzi privately. The situation is not good. It seems that the resuscitator is not completely dead yet. He left some tricks on Lao Zhang. It is likely that it is similar to the way it eroded Izundao before. As long as the characteristic conditions are triggered, it can occupy the host's body and quickly seize control. He Guangzi was shocked. Suddenly he realized that the resuscitator's trick was here. No wonder he didn't use any powerful tricks at the last moment and was quickly killed. Sure enough, he who can reach the strength of a demigod is definitely not an ordinary person and should not be underestimated. After thinking for a moment, He Guangzi asked, Deputy Director Zhao, are you sure you are not mistaken? Is there a way to remove it? Or kill the resuscitator without affecting Lao Zhang's life? Zhao He said, after his Undao's matter was reported, I took the time to check his past archives and records, and checked the surveillance information of the specific time period, and the corresponding records of entering and leaving important places. From this, I found the signs of when the three of them were controlled by the resuscitator and confirmed the specific characteristics. These characteristics are mainly changes in breathing habits and changes in the frequency of soul waves. These two are very subtle, but they are valuable enough for reference. I can tell you clearly now that I saw these characteristics in Lao Zhang. As for the means of removal, I'm sorry, I don't have them at the moment. The detection system of the Divine Mecha cannot identify the frequency of soul waves, and the corresponding identification pendant must be loaded. The Fire Dragon Mecha naturally does not have it, because conventional battles generally do not involve this, and the output of this thing is also very small. When he was observing Zhang Shengfeng's situation on the detection system, he subconsciously thought that the change in his breath was due to the injury because Zhang Shengfeng was injured. But when he saw Zhang Shengfeng in person, he discovered the difference in the frequency of soul waves. The so-called soul wave frequency is the soul electromagnetic wave formed by the interference of the soul in the material world. This electromagnetic wave is between the material world and the soul world. Zhao He happened to have the characteristics related to the soul, so he could see the difference. After hearing Zhao He's explanation, He Guangzi also fell silent. Zhao He said, I will arrange for someone from the Ice God sequence to come and freeze Lao Zhang first. I guess this resurrector is not in a hurry to parasitize, but is waiting for the opportunity. In short, don't let the matter leak out first, He Guangzi said in a deep voice. Okay, both of them were a little cautious. After thinking for a while, He Guangzi asked, by the way, Vice Minister Zhao, has that person not returned yet? With that person here, we should be able to find a way to remove the resurrected person from Lao Zhang, right? Zhao He shook his head slowly and said, not yet. If that person is here, it might be feasible, but the fact is that he has not returned yet. He Guangzi felt a little sorry. That person they were talking about was naturally the only one among the strongest humans who specialized in soul characteristics and had very powerful abilities. However, a strong person like him had a great influence on the overall changes. Before, not only the star race, but also many aliens of other races were offering rewards for that person. Therefore, humans raised his confidentiality level to the highest level. In the Federation, only the strongest and a few high-level people knew the situation. Based on the request of that person, those who knew the situation were forbidden to recite his name. In this regard, although the strong men did not understand the meaning, they naturally did as he said. Moreover, In order to avoid the strong and scattered aliens, that person also hid in an extremely remote place in the Silent Star region. Not only that, he is still exploring a very mysterious ruins alone, and has not yet transmitted information to the top powerhouses of the human side. If they did not have the means to confirm whether his life was stable, they would have suspected whether that person had encountered an accident in the ruins. Zhao He pondered and said, "So, which person in the Ice God sequence should be asked to freeze Lao Zhang?" He Guangzi said, "Deputy Director Zhao, I believe you have made up your mind." "Right," Zhao He laughed, "that's true. Although freezing the unconscious Zhang Shengfeng can be done by any Ice God sequence powerhouse above the middle of the A level, since someone is called to do it, it naturally means that the other party will know about it. In this case, naturally, we can only choose the most worthy and most deserving person to know this news from the crowd in front of us." The mechas carried the remains of the noseless Mecha and, according to He Guangzi's order, they were divided into more than a dozen queues and flew back to Earth. The last team was Zhao He's Fire Dragon Mech, He Guangzi's Thunder King Mech, Tan Yaozu's Assistant Mech, and Li Yi's Gaia Mech. The three of them ejected the insertion cabin and entered the cockpit of the Fire Dragon Mech. After all, this is an S-class mech, and the cockpit is large enough to accommodate dozens of people. Li Yi has not completed the ship transformation, but his body is not weak. As long as he puts on a helmet and turns on the space sealing function of the driving uniform, he can get out of the cabin in person. He Guangzi and Tan Yaozu are both top 3 masters of the human heavenly rank, so naturally they have completed the ship transformation and can directly activate their divinity and cross over in their physical bodies. At this moment, everyone has gathered in Zhao He's cockpit. After listening to He Guangzi's explanation, Li Yi was puzzled and asked directly, "Strange, why was this resuscitator sent into the cockpit of Chief Zhao, and didn't want to attack Deputy Chief Zhao?" Zhao He said, "I also wonder about this. I guess his backhand consumption is not low, most likely he didn't immediately corrode Lao Zhang." Li Yi slightly moved forward a few steps and observed Zhang Shengfeng's condition closely. Indeed, Chief Zhang's breathing rhythm is indeed completely different from what I have seen before. While observing, Li Yi activated the microelectric characteristics and carefully judged the frequency of the soul wave mentioned by Zhao He. He had never specifically identified Zhang Shengfeng before, and he was not sure if he could identify it. But in this battle, he had already comprehended the millimeter-level subtle perception. So he thought about whether he could combine the microelectric characteristics with his perception ability to see if he could sense the soul wave. By the way, he also confirmed Zhao He's statement. This time he was called over, but he still had doubts about the speed of the previous battle. After a while, Li Yi shook his head in disappointment. The two can be combined, but the millimeter-level subtle perception is not enough. The change of microelectricity is not the change of electromagnetic waves. At least it needs to be felt at the micron level. If you want to go deeper into the changes at the electronic level, the difficulty will be even more terrifying. Since he couldn't confirm it, he just worked directly. He directly activated the freezing feature and stretched out his hand to push forward. With a crackling sound, Zhang Shengfeng, who was lying on the ground, began to freeze. On the other side, Tan Yaozu also came over and activated the coordination feature to adjust the internal structure of the freeze and strengthen the freeze. However, looking at Zhang Shengfeng's freezing, Zhao He suddenly said, "Li Yi, is your freezing power at the maximum? Why is Lao Zhang's soul wave still radiating outward?" Chapter 281 Surplus. Zhao He's question startled everyone. Li Yi said calmly, "I will increase the output of the characteristic." This characteristic of his was one of the main characteristics that was strengthened in the characteristic spire before, and now it has the strength of the heavenly characteristic. Under the full output, the surrounding chill spread outward in waves. Everyone immediately felt an unprecedented chill. Even Zhao He, the strongest, felt a slight stinging on his skin. Tan Yaozu assisted from the side and nodded secretly. Very good characteristic strength. It seems that the young man Li Yi can achieve such a level. It is not without reason. With this alone, he can beat most of the middle-level heavenly ones. If he can master some more heavenly characteristic combination skills and improve his basic strength, he may really be able to compete with me, an old man. Thinking in his heart, he did not slow down. He simultaneously activated the coordination characteristic, constantly adjusting the internal coordination of the freeze, making it as solid as steel rock. Generally speaking, it is not difficult for the heavenly characteristic to freeze an unconscious strongest. However, it is naturally impossible to freeze for a long time. Because the strongest have strong bodies, they naturally contain divinity. Over time, they will gradually unfreeze and wake up naturally. Like Li Yu before in the Heritage Ruins, he was able to freeze the mysterious thoughts because Yang Qiaoku's clone's essence was at most an upper-level evolver, and his strength was not strong enough to resist freezing in a coma. If the body possessed by the mysterious thoughts was a heavenly rank, or even a strongest, then their subsequent treatment would naturally not be the same as before. Fortunately, Tanyaozu's current coordination characteristics can also improve the quality of freezing. With the two of them working so hard, Zhao He's frown soon relaxed. This is barely able to seal the brain-soul frequency transmitted by Lao Zhang. He Guangzi noticed that Zhao He's frown had not completely relaxed, and asked, "Deputy Director Zhao, the word barely means that there are actually some missing parts." Zhao He nodded and said, "Yes, there is still a slight trace of soul waves transmitted. It seems that this resurrector has other means, and it seems to be slowly transmitting something to the outside. Fortunately, the cockpit of the divine mecha can shield internal and external signals, otherwise this guy would probably succeed." He Guangzi said, "Be careful, let's go back to Earth as soon as possible, find the blockade cabin, seal Lao Zhang first, and ensure that the so-called soul waves are completely sealed, and then think of a way." Li Yu also knew that the freezing limit had been reached, so he stopped. Zhang Shengfang in front had been frozen into a large pile of ice. After being guided by the coordination characteristics, the ice layer inside showed multiple ice patterns, overlapping and nesting, as if multiple locks were added inside. He reached out his hand and touched it lightly, thinking to himself, "Although I don't have the coordination characteristic, I am the one who controls the freezing. With my divine control ability that is about to reach perfection, I can probably imitate the ice patterns in it. Increase the stability of the freezing. Later, I can ask Commander Tan for advice on some common freezing ice patterns and learn from them." After completing these, Zhao He reminded again, "Remember, this matter is only known to the four of us. How big is the group of resurrectors, and whether they will always be a threat to us are all unknowns. Therefore, even if it is other powerful people, unless I inform them in advance, they must assume that the other party is unaware, of course, except for General Lin and Duanmu." He Guangzi was surprised, whereas Chief Qin, Zhao He said, "He has a big mouth, and it will be worse if you tell him." Everyone laughed. He Guangzi shook his head and said, "Well, State Chief Qin is indeed a hot-tempered man who has a hard time keeping secrets, so let's talk about it later." Tanyaozu stroked his beard with a smile and said, "Indeed, this guy Lao Qin is lucky to be chasing after the Star Clan with General Lin. Tanyaozu and Qin Longchuan are of the same generation. Although he has not yet been promoted to the strongest, his strength is there, and everyone regards him as the strongest." Several people complained about Qin Longchuan for a few words, and then turned the topic to Li Yi. Zhao He smiled first and said, "Li Yi, your current strength is comparable to that of a high-level heavenly rank. Although your endurance is a little worse, it is indeed amazing. Can you tell me how you did it?" He Guangzi also said, "Yes, the speed at which you condense the divine gene is so fast, better than the best performers in our previous Heavenly God Mecha program. How did you do it? As a reference, I would like to know about it. Of course, if it involves some of your personal secrets, you can choose not to say it, and just talk about some things that can be said." The attitudes of several people seemed to have treated Li Yi as an equal. Li Yi pondered for a moment and said, "There are not many secrets. One is to maintain enough soul strength to have a surplus of divine genes. The second is to reach an absolutely empty mind state as soon as possible. Maintaining an absolutely empty mind state in a mecha battle can effectively stimulate the generation of divine genes." Tanyaozu stroked his beard calmly and asked, "The surplus of soul for divine genes? What is your surplus approximately?" He Guangzi nodded slightly in his heart when he heard this, and thought to himself, "It's the soul surplus. When I had about 10 souls surplus before, the improvement speed was fast enough. It seems that Li Yi should have more." Zhao He thought to himself, looking at Li Yi, "His soul surplus is probably much higher than mine at the beginning. Could it be 20 or 30 souls surplus? This does make sense." As expected, the old saying goes, 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 according to his previous experience. As long as the soul strength is more than twice the divine gene, the speed will be faster. And he previously released a large amount of redundant memory through the vacuum purification method, which also made his soul's surplus increase greatly, and the efficiency of generating divine genes increased instead of decreased. In order to avoid scaring a few people with his high soul capacity, Li Yi decided to lower the number. He coughed lightly and said, I have condensed 44 divine genes now. The soul surplus has not been measured, but it is estimated that there are still about 40 surplus. Hiss. Li Yi heard the sound of 3 people sucking in cold air. How many? The 3 asked at the same time. He Guangxi's mouth twitched. Tan Yaozu accidentally pulled out several strands of his beard with his fingers. Zhao He stood up suddenly. Li Yi did not expect that several people would have such a big reaction. He immediately thought to himself, it seems that I have underestimated the number, but it seems that the situation is still under control. Thinking of this, he said, I mean, the remaining number is about 40. Zhao He stared at Li Yi and asked word by word, are you saying that you now have 44 divine genes and more than 40 souls remaining? Chapter 282 Return. Yes, that's right, Li Yi nodded. He responded to Zhao He's question so calmly. Zhao He hesitated and said, if I remember correctly, you are not yet 20 years old, right? Yes, that's right, Li Yi nodded. Tan Yaozu asked, Li Yi, what year did you join the fleet? It seems to be last year, right? It hasn't been a year yet, right? Yes, that's right, Li Yi continued to nod. The 3 of them didn't know what to say. The more they confirmed it, the more amazing it was. In less than a year, 44 divine genes have been condensed. Is this still a human? Tan Yaozu sighed and said, Li Yi, you really make me jealous. Compared with you, my decades of persistence is like a joke. Li Yi became more and more low-key and silent. Zhao He patted Tan Yaozu on the shoulder and said, don't worry about the super standard genius, you should be happy. Tan Yaozu smiled bitterly, happy? How can I not be happy? After all, the more talented Li Yi is, the better our human talents will be. It's just, hey, I always feel unwilling. I really still refuse to admit that I am old. He Guangxi didn't say anything, feeling something was wrong. When he had more than 20 souls left, the speed of condensing divine genes was faster than most people. But even so, it took him 80 years to condense the 54 divine genes needed for the remaining 2 divine nuclei from the first stage of the heavenly position to the 8th stage of the heavenly position. He asked solemnly, Li Yi, did you lie to us? Li Yi's eyelids twitched slightly, and he was tactically silent, wondering whether he should tell the truth. Tan Yaozu frowned and said, old He, Li Yi is so powerful that 44 divine genes are considered few. How can it be considered a lie? Zhao He also shook his head and said, that's right, old He, you have to respect the facts and the record. He Guangxi shook his head and said, no, I mean, Li Yi's soul surplus is actually higher. When this was said, Tan Yaozu and He Guangxi were both shocked and actually felt that it seemed to make sense. After all, it took less than a year to reach such an astonishing number of divine genes condensed, even if it was related to the absolute empty state of mind that Li Yi said. But in fact, the soul's surplus to the number of divine genes is probably the core. They are all experienced people, and naturally know how fast the soul's surplus is and how fast the divine genes condense. However, the surplus of 40 genes is beyond their original cognition. You know, even Zhang Shengfeng, who is recognized as the most talented among the strongest, did not have more than 30 soul surpluses at his peak. And as he advances to the heavenly position and the strongest, his soul surplus will naturally decline slowly. After all, the means by which humans mainly rely on the steel pillars of thought to enhance the strength of their souls also have their limits. However, Tan Yaozu still shook his head and said, no, 40 surplus is incredible. Old Li, you said that Li Yi has a higher surplus. I think it is impossible. Besides, who knows what kind of qualitative change will occur when the soul surplus reaches a certain level. Old He, do you know? Have you tried it? No. After saying this, He Guangxi also began to doubt himself. Zhao He also said, 40 can most likely produce a qualitative change, or it depends on the person. After all, the absolute emptiness of the soul realm that Li Yi mentioned does not sound like something that ordinary people can do. Seeing that they had finished explaining for him, Li Yi simply followed their words. The two officers analyzed it. Although He Guangzi still had many doubts in his heart, he reluctantly agreed with Zhao He's statement. After all, Li Yi himself also had other special conditions, such as reaching the perfect level of fighting very early and reaching the peak of the human body before evolution. Now he has a fighting skill level that is stronger than that of the demigod level resurrector, so it seems reasonable to have such performance. He Guangzi thought. Anyway, the remaining soul has reached more than 40, which should be an indicator of qualitative change. We can try to optimize the God Mecha plan later. The work of acquiring various knowledge in the heritage ruins is still in progress. I believe that as long as humans are given enough time to develop, the entire alien territory will be suppressed. Go back and observe Li Yi's situation. After Zhang Shengfang finished freezing, the 4 mechas returned. If it takes too long, it will inevitably arouse some suspicion from other mecha masters. Moreover, the wartime alert state has not been fully restored, and no one knows the specific situation of the Star Clan. Although it seems that many things have happened in the meantime. In fact, it has only been an hour and a half since the strongest of the human side chased the strongest of the Star Clan. After returning, everyone is ready to interrogate the captives and extract more information. At the same time, those who need to repair should repair, and those who need to rotate should rotate. Li Yi has experienced many missions before, and he is also the main force in the battle. His military exploits are not low. Now no one comes to him to make trouble, and now he is finally relaxed. At this moment, the Moon Fortress. Although everyone is going to fight temporarily this time, they have left the Earth after all. Just in case, they should stay on the Moon Fortress for a while and do a detailed inspection to prevent the Earth from being invaded by strong people. Although this action is somewhat procedural and not humane enough, everyone has no objection. Even Zhao Hui, the deputy minister of the Federation, did not say anything, so naturally others would not say much. Moreover, the combat alert has not been lifted yet. Since He Kyungyin can mix into the Star Tribe, it cannot be ruled out that human strongmen have mixed in. The battles were frequent before, and it was not easy to detect immediately. Now that they can repair temporarily, they naturally need to eliminate the hidden dangers. Li Yi was one of the first few to be tested and completed the process quickly. Then, he went directly to his personal residence assigned as a staff consultant for the Moon Fortress. This residence is similar to a small villa, with a large interior space of more than 200 square meters. It was considered a mansion on the lunar fortress. After all, this was a war base. There were no more than 30 residences like this on the entire moon, which were very rare. He planned to complete the repairs here before the next possible combat order. Of course, before resting, he was also confirming what the characteristics of the two newly generated divine genes were after the two battles. One was an immortal divine gene, and the other was a Thor sequence divine gene. The changes brought about by this immortal divine gene were very obvious. He used his subtle perception ability to perceive his entire body, and felt that all the cells in his body were extremely active and had extremely strong vitality. In addition, there was also an additional active characteristic that allowed him to give vitality to the outside. The biggest difference between this and the growth characteristic was that this kind of vitality given to the outside was extremely strong. Even ordinary dead plants could be restored as long as they had been dead for no more than 3 days. However, although it was strong, it was only relative. If it really manifested in battle, it would probably be useless. The current main function was to extend life and improve the comprehensive endurance of combat. The divine gene of the Thor sequence has microelectric characteristics, which can be regarded as a reinforcement of his endurance of this characteristic, and can slightly increase the comprehensive activation time of his 3.1 burst skills. After taking stock in this way, he briefly adapted to the millimeter-level micro-perception ability, tried the new iteration of 3.2 burst skills, and prepared to find a place to sleep and rest. Unexpectedly, he had just taken off his clothes and was about to lie down. Suddenly, the bell at the door rang. Moreover, the communicator also rang, and when he opened it, it was Chen Kai-ongzi. "I'm at your door, open the door." Chapter 283 Invitation. Although Li Yi was surprised by Chen Kai-ongzi's arrival, he quickly put on his clothes and opened the door with a remote control. After a while, there was a light sound of footsteps at the entrance. Li Yi saw Chen Kai-ongzi in the living room, wearing the Yaochi warship's exclusive combat uniform. This was the first time Li Yi had seen her in a private setting after many days. Her body was convex, her long legs stepped on the ground powerfully, and her movements and posture when she stepped in were quite like the style of a beauty in military uniform walking on the catwalk. Li Yi looked at her face again. Her almond eyes were dark and round, her skin was as white as ever, and her nose was straight and symmetrical, still the familiar look before. Her breathing rhythm was strong and deep, and it was obvious that her strength had indeed improved a lot recently. Li Yi could see that Chen Kaiyongzi's strength had made a big breakthrough during the previous battle, and now he looked at her carefully and felt different. Although there were no casualties in the commando team he led during this repair, the few familiar people were only slightly injured at most. Among the senior officers he knew, Chen Yanxiang and Zhang Shengfang were the most seriously ill. But he knew that in addition to the acquaintances, there were still more than 400 upper rank and 3-in-1, and more than 60 heavenly rank masters who had completely perished. More than 800 seriously injured and dying also needed various medical resources to focus on recovery. If it weren't for the fact that human nanomedical technology was already advanced enough, this battle would have been won quickly, otherwise there would have been even more upper rank, 3-in-1, and heavenly rank masters who had died. Moreover, although the number of deaths seemed small, in fact, this added up to 7% of the total number of human mecha divisions over 80 meters. And this number, even if the border star base had accumulated over the years, it would take 30 to 40 years to produce such a large loss of personnel. Although the dust has not settled yet, it is the first meeting after the war after all, and Li Yi is happy in his heart. Immediately, he walked over, took the initiative to open his hands, and hugged Chen Kaiyongzi. "Instructor, I'm glad to see you intact again." Click. Li Yi hugged Chen Kaiyongzi. Before Chen Kaiyongzi could speak, he was stunned by Li Yi's passionate hug. After he reacted, he patted Li Yi's shoulder vigorously and said with a smile, "Good boy, it's just a war that lasted less than a week. It's not necessary. Besides, what are you talking about? Do you want me to die in the battle so much?" Li Yi fought back at the right time, took 2 steps back, and said with a smile, "No, I just expressed my longing for the instructor. I still remember the scene when the instructor trained me hard." Chen Kaiyongzi's eyes lit up. "From what you said, you want to practice with me now that you are so strong." Li Yi smiled maliciously. Of course, he often practiced with Chen Kaiyongzi before he advanced to the middle position, but she suddenly increased her strength and abused him many times. Although the effect was remarkable every time and made him make great progress, he had never competed with Chen Kaiyongzi, who was fighting with all her strength before leaving the Yaochi ship. He had to get back at least a few times, right? He is not yet a heavenly rank. So he shouldn't be bullying Chen Kaiyongzi, right? Chen Kaiyongzi didn't seem to notice the meaning in Li Yi's eyes, and said happily, "Yes, then we have an appointment. We must find a chance to practice well later. As for now, I have something important to tell you." Li Yi nodded and invited Chen Kaiyongzi to sit down. Chen Kaiyongzi raised her long legs and sat down casually. This is also her style. In daily life, she never cares whether she is elegant enough, but only cares whether she is comfortable enough. On the battlefield and in training, she becomes extremely demanding. Li Yi once saw the early Chen Kaiyongzi in a memory fragment and knew that she was essentially pursuing freedom. It's just that war and hatred made her extremely strict in combat training. At this time, Chen Kaiyongzi looked around and saw all kinds of high-end and luxurious furnishings in the living room. He sighed and said, "You are really great. You can actually have such an independent residence in a war base of the level of the Moon Fortress. Remember that in our Yaochi ship, even Captain Teng and the captain did not have the qualifications to have such high-grade things in the Moon Fortress, but this is barely commensurate with your achievements. After all, you led the team to discover the heritage ruins. Moreover, I heard that you also did a lot of great things in the earth ruins." Li Yi said modestly, "Instructor, there is no need to say these. In terms of achievements, who among you has not experienced life and death?" Chen Kaiyongzi smiled and said, "Don't say that. Your achievements benefit all mankind. This is not comparable to some small war functions. After all, things are difficult and easy, and achievements are big and small." The two chatted casually for a few words, and Chen Kaiyongzi began to talk about business. "Now the war with the Star Clan will probably end soon, but even if it's over, with such an intense battle between us and the Star Clan, We will inevitably have friction and exchanges with other powerful alien races in the future. I want to take this opportunity to apply for independence and lead a deep space main ship. I will be the captain of the Mecha team and you will be the captain. We will go to the Star Clan to establish the first batch of cruise lines. What do you think? Hearing this, Liu touched his chin and his heart moved slightly. He has made great contributions in this battle, and he must be able to obtain a large number of divine cores he needs. However, only a few S-level units have fallen in the entire war, so it is not certain whether he can get them. After all, the achievements of other powerful people will naturally not be low. If he wants to continue to make rapid progress, he obviously has to go back to Earth to brush various challenge trials and fill up those areas with high divinity penetration. Chen Kaiyongzi seemed to see that Li Yi wanted to refuse, and hurriedly said, Li Yi, don't rush to refuse. I know that you should have many areas in the Earth ruins to explore and test. After all, it is a place where strength can be quickly improved. However, it will take time for me to apply for independence and lead a deep space main ship there. It will probably take about 3 months to half a year to get it done. During this period, you can continue to complete the various challenges and trials you want in the Earth ruins. I believe that with your level, it is estimated that you will be able to fill up the required divine high penetration resources soon. At that time, during the window period, you can become the captain of a deep space main ship and complete the ship transformation by the way. It can be said to be the best of both worlds. Hearing this, Li Yi was thoughtful. It seems that this is indeed a good idea. Instructor's suggestion is indeed good, but why does instructor want me to be the captain? And not you? Chen Kaiyongzi smiled, because you are the 8th level authority that I am most familiar with. Only with the 8th level authority can you independently apply for a new deep space main ship. Otherwise, you can only inherit the old ship, and you are stronger than most captains nowadays. Except for your poor endurance, it is even a bit of a waste of your talent to be a captain. After all, with your current achievements, it should be no problem to be promoted to the rank of general, and as the captain of the Mecha team, it is not completely impossible for me to complete the shipbuilding, because a main ship is generally driven by the captain and the captain-in-chief in rotation. It's just that because the captain is the one who drives it for a long time, the shipbuilding of all captains is completed faster. And the captain-in-chief usually needs 2 or 3 generations to complete the shipbuilding. You are extremely talented, and the time required for shipbuilding must be very short. When you have completely completed the shipbuilding, I can also get more rotation time. Overall, it's much more cost-effective. Li Yi understood. Well, it seems like a good deal, Chen Kaiyongzi said with a smile. It's more than a good deal, it's a win-win situation. Are you free now? Let's find a training ground to practice. That's what I want. Let's go. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 284 Amazing. Li Yi and Chen Kaiyongzi went straight to a nearby vacant training ground. Because they were now engaged in a physical battle of heavenly rank strength, the previous driving uniforms were easily damaged. The training suits were made of special fibers produced locally in the Moon Fortress, with a high level of protection, suitable for physical training of heavenly rank powerhouses. The two entered the men's and women's locker rooms respectively. It was very quiet here, and Chen Kaiyongzi took off her driving uniform swiftly. Snap! The driving suit fell to the soles of her feet, revealing her smooth and white calves. The muscle lines under the skin were gathered, tight and dense. She stepped out of her calves and reached into the training suit. The button chain of the training suit was on the middle spine of the back, and with the flexibility of the heavenly rank powerhouse, it could be easily reached. She took out a special rubber band, stretched her hands back, wrapped her tiger's mouth around her neck, lifted her long hair up, and swiftly made 3 circles, forming a small bun standing behind her head, tied with a rubber band. Without the cover, the white and slender neck was exposed. In front of the mirror, she touched her chest and waist, secretly marveling. The training suit of the Moon Fortress is made of very good materials, so elastic that it can stretch like this. After looking at it for a while, she stepped out of the locker room. She took the initiative to challenge Li Yi. Naturally, as an instructor who trained Li Yi personally, she wanted to see how much progress he had made in the past 6 months. Although she had seen many amazing operations and strong performances of Li Yi in the war, but it is better to try it herself. Moreover, she could see that Li Yi's fighting skills had already broken through perfection, and she also wanted to learn from it. By the way, reminisce about the past and improve the estranged relationship. As for how to improve, there is naturally nothing more suitable than a fight. As for other little thoughts, but they are not there for the time being. When she walked out of the locker room, she had adjusted her state in advance, and her breath was becoming more and more surging. During the past 6 months, she had been holding back for a long time, and she broke through to the 3rd stage of the heavenly rank in one breath. Then, with a combination of 3 characteristics and various amplification techniques, she could be comparable to the 5th stage, which was a great improvement. She could have such an amazing performance, on the one hand, naturally because she had a special inheritance and learned a lot of methods other than the regular army. Therefore, she had been hiding her strength before the breakthrough. On the one hand, it was because of low key. On the other hand, it was also because the means of breakthrough were relatively dangerous and should not be publicized. At this moment, the two stood at the edge of the training ground. Li Yi, you are stronger than me now, so I won't hold back and will attack with all my strength. Chen Kai-ongzi continued to adjust his breathing while stretching his muscles, striving to achieve the strongest state of mind and body. Li Yi looked at Chen Kai-ongzi and admired in his heart, what kind of physical explosion technique has the instructor learned? The intensity of this explosion is actually almost the same as the effect of my original version of the explosion technique. It seems that the instructor has something hidden in him. I just don't know what level this secret she hides belongs to. Li Yi used to think that many of Chen Kai-ongzi's combat methods were quite different from some of the techniques conventionally taught on the main ship. For example, the various fighting moves of the Tiger Strike School are powerful, and they contain power and artistic conception, which he often borrows. According to the corresponding tips obtained in the Enlightenment Mountain, after reaching the subtle state of fighting, there is another divine state. If you can learn the inheritance system knowledge of the Tiger Strike School from Chen Kai-ongzi, you may also be able to gain some insights from it. After a while, Chen Kai-ongzi made adjustments, took the starting position of the Tiger Strike School, jumped forward, and began to accelerate. Swoosh! In the leap, Chen Kai-ongzi's breath suddenly disappeared, and his presence was immediately wiped out. In front of Li Yi, Chen Kai-ongzi's figure rushing towards him also disappeared synchronously, which was very magical. Even if Li Yi observed the flow of air around him, he could not see the movement trajectory of Chen Kai-ongzi. It can be seen that Chen Kai-ongzi, who is familiar with Li Yi's methods, started with all his strength to converge his own and the outside world's activity traces. This move also combines the wonderful characteristics of the heavenly dust, which is more concealed than Zhao Mengheo's ghost flash, which is amazing. Li Yi estimated that the characteristics of the dust this time might be able to ignore even ordinary divine interference. However, this still did not pose a problem for Li Yi. He turned 150 degrees to the right on the spot, raised his arm, and suddenly reached forward. Pa! This reaching hand seemed to have penetrated the invisible and intangible protection and directly hammered on a soft piece of flesh. Immediately afterwards, Chen Kai-ongzi's figure was broken from invisibility and flew backwards. Bang! On the ground, Chen Kai-ongzi's inertia of flying backwards was very fierce. She stepped on the ground and rubbed continuously, and still slid back for more than 10 meters before dissolving the impact of Li Yi's punch. Just this punch made Chen Kai-ongzi's face change slightly. It seems that I still underestimated you, Li Yi. Are you using normal strength now, or full strength burst strength? Instructor, do you think it is normal or full strength? Li Yi smiled politely. He has not yet launched the burst skill, and the strength base in the normal state is also very strong. 44 divine genes, plus the physical enhancement of the characteristic spire, and the second limit breaking, the pure power is enough to be comparable to the 4th stage of the heavenly position. You must know that since the integration of the 3 elements, the soul divinity and genes have been integrated, and the human body's strength has undergone a qualitative change. Then the heavenly position obtains the heavenly position characteristics, and each stage has a corresponding qualitative change. Generally speaking, the physical strength of the 4th stage of the heavenly position has reached 70 to 80 times the standard gravity. Li Yi has reached such a level with his upper body, which can be said to be a unique level in human history. Coupled with his own subtle and terrifying power, he can easily push most of the middle stage heavenly position strongmen. Therefore, even if he just punched casually at this moment, He showed a state of ease and easily knocked Chen Kaiyongzi away. Chen Kaiyongzi was surprised when she heard this. It seems that now that you have exerted your full strength, your physical body has already reached a high level of heavenly rank. Physical strength and mecha strength are not the same. She knew that Li Yi's fighting skills were at the level of martial arts, and it was not particularly surprising that he could exert the combat power of the high level of heavenly rank by controlling the A-level mecha. On the contrary, she was surprised that his physical strength had reached a high level of heavenly rank. Li Yi nodded, which was considered as acquiescence. Seeing Li Yi nod, Chen Kaiyongzi couldn't help but sigh. I thought my secret was already big and outrageous enough, but I didn't expect you to be even more excessive than me. It's really unfair. In that case, I'm going to use my best tricks to practice with you. Li Yi nodded and said with a smile, I couldn't ask for more. I'm also curious about the instructor's secret. Can you tell me? Chen Kaiyongzi smiled and said, of course, but you have to catch my best trick in one move. If you can't catch it, then you are not qualified to know the secret for the time being. Li Yi's heart moved. Qualified? Chen Kaiyongzi nodded and said, yes, you can only be qualified if you can catch it in one move, or even crack it. Chapter 285 Contact. Li Yi asked strangely, what kind of secret is it that requires such qualification? Chen Kaiyongzi's cheeks turned red and she said, don't worry. I can only tell you if you take it. Li Yi shrugged and said, okay, then please show me a good show, instructor. Chen Kaiyongzi's blushing face was fleeting, and she soon became serious and solemn. She leaned forward, squatted slightly, stepped forward with her left foot, supported herself with one arm, and put the other hand behind her back. It was the starting position of the tiger strike style. With the adjustment of her body posture, Chen Kaiyongzi's body began to show a kind of wonderful aura. This aura was as if an ancient divine tiger really appeared on Chen Kaiyongzi. It was as if it was real, and it became more and more solid. The whole body was covered with the golden hair, the forehead was shaped like a king, the body was huge, with colorful black stripes, and the pupils were huge. When the mouth opened, the sharp teeth like mountain ridges were exposed, and the long tongue covered with the barbs was like a big red cloth. The world was swallowed, and the roar never stopped, shocking 100 miles away. This tiger is not an ordinary tiger, but a powerful shadow that gathers countless divinities and manifests invisible power. It is so high that no one knows how high it is, and so huge that no one knows how huge it is. In a flash, Li Yi looked up and saw a huge tiger-shaped shadow that stretched to 70 or 80 meters high. The light-colored divine energy flowing outside her body was also constantly filing the tiger shape, making its already powerful momentum more solid. This change from virtual to real made Li Yi's heart move, and he thought of a possibility. Lifelike, as if magical, could it be that the instructor's secret is related to the artificial soul of the fifth era, or the technology of turning virtual into real? Is she a resurrector? No, it shouldn't be possible. Instructor, maybe it's a coincidence that you have mastered some of the power of the resurrectors. Speaking of which, after Commander Zhang and his team successfully captured the colorful giant tiger that successfully turned virtual into real in the star ruins, it seemed that they handed it over to BioStar for research? I wonder what the subsequent situation is. For a moment, Li Yi couldn't help but look forward to it more and more. Judging from the brewing of Chen Kaiyongzi's trump card, although it took a long time, its power obviously has the lethality close to the high level of the heavenly rank. In terms of strength, Chen Kaiyongzi at this moment may not be defeated by Zhao Menghao. You know, although Zhao Menghao is only at the 6th level, in actual combat, he has already reached the level of competing with the 7th level of the heavenly rank. Although he is the 7th level of the heavenly rank who has not yet mastered the ultimate move of the heavenly rank, he is obviously extraordinary. The more so, the more Li Yi wants to know what secrets Chen Kaiyongzi has hidden. After brewing for 3 minutes, the phantom of the tiger outside Chen Kaiyongzi's body can no longer see the illusory texture, and began to stomp the ground suddenly and leap forward. Boom, boom, boom. After 3 loud sounds comparable to the stomping of a C-class mecha, the colorful tiger has suddenly jumped up and pounced on Li Yi. Li Yi was also prepared. While waiting for Chen Kaiyongzi to brew, he was also brewing a big move. This move was the 2nd stage of divine compression that he learned from He Guangzi. The divine in his palm was constantly flowing, emitting a faint glow. His divine nature was also constantly compressing, not stimulating the power of characteristics, but only stimulating the divinity of his whole body, constantly gathering. Then, this super energy ball, which was originally the size of a fist, was also constantly compressing and flowing, turning into a small energy ball the size of a pigeon egg, with all its brilliance. Originally, with his skills, he could continue to condense into a needle-like shape with stronger destructive power. However, his total amount of divinity was still much worse than He Guangzi's. If it was condensed into needle shape, the divinity would be consumed. This was not beautiful. Therefore, he simply compressed it into this. When the tiger, which was 70 to 80 meters tall, pounced on him, he gathered the energy ball at the tip of his middle finger. Then, he flicked his finger. Whoosh! Along with his flick, the bullet in front of him suddenly exploded and shot out, tearing the air, tearing everything, and instantly hitting the tiger's forehead. However, at the moment of the impact, the tiger roared, and the entire huge shadow shook directly, and the divinity burst out, rejecting the energy bomb outside the forehead. Chi-chi-chi. The two maintained a huge dynamic posture of instant acceleration, and seemed to be fixed in mid-air, resulting in a stalemate for several seconds. The huge divine flame exploded outwards with a fierce stalemate between the two. Boom. The air seemed to be burned, and the shadow on the outer edge of the tiger twisted continuously. In the third second, the energy bomb exploded, and the tiger was hit by the huge divine explosion and flew back. The head exploded and turned into countless scattered shadows, dissipating in mid-air. However, the tiger's head exploded, but it seemed to be able to move. It stood up directly, and took a few steps forward with its headless broad tiger body. Step. 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 The ground made a rumbling sound as the tiger stepped on the ground. Chen Kaiongzi laughed. Hey Li Yi, it seems that you can only be regarded as catching this move, but it can't be regarded as breaking my trump card. Tell me, should I tell you this secret? Li Yi smiled slightly. The instructor seems to be too happy too early. Don't open champagne at halftime. Chen Kaiongzi's eyebrows jumped, and she suddenly looked up at the tiger phantom. After the phantom stepped on the ground 3 steps, it lost its balance and fell to the ground. As it fell to the ground, the phantom directly dissipated, like ink seeping into a pool, continuing to smudge the surroundings, and then slowly dissipated. Chen Kaiongzi was stunned. Li Yi, what did you just do? My tiger strike phantom, in theory, can still move freely even if its hands and feet are broken, its head is broken, and its heart is destroyed. She didn't quite understand. Li Yi smiled and said, because when my energy bomb explodes directly, its power is more than that. I deliberately adjusted the movement when it exploded to make it extremely concealed. Therefore, your tiger phantom seems to have only its head exploded. In fact, the divine shock wave generated by the explosion of my energy bomb has destroyed the inner part of your tiger phantom. Chen Kaiongzi suddenly realized, I understand. I didn't expect that you are so proficient in the control of the divinity that you can even do this. Li Yi continued, by the way, the instructor's move is very similar to the group attack move launched by the Resurrectors when facing a group of A-level mechas in outer space outside the Earth. They probably come from the same source, right? Chen Kaiongzi nodded slightly. Yes, this move of mine comes from the 5th era of divinity, but I am not a Resurrector, so you can rest assured. Li Yi touched his chin. I also know that the instructor is not a Resurrector, but I guess the instructor's previous breakthrough method is not much related to the Resurrectors, right? Chen Kaiongzi said, since you were able to defeat me with this move, it means that you are now strong enough to know. Let me start with the story of the Xianheng Star War 18 years ago. Chapter 286 Floating Corpse. The Battle of Xianheng Star? Li Yi was also intrigued. It could be traced back to that? He had heard about this battle for a long time. Although he had read a lot of archive materials, he only skimmed through them and did not really understand the details. Chen Kaiongzi said slowly, Xianheng Star, its previous location was closer to our human heartland than Boundary Star. It is about 30 light minutes outside the gate of Boundary Star. At that time, the main fighting race of humans on Boundary Star was the Tu clan. After more than 200 years of war, the two sides have already formed a corresponding tacit understanding. They are fighting B and C class mechas, and the overall conflict intensity has not yet reached its maximum, but suddenly one day, the Star clan went crazy for some reason and suddenly invaded on a large scale. At that time, the human defense force on Boundary Star was broken at once, and 70% of the garrison forces were directly destroyed. The remaining 30% were guerrillas, wandering around the Stardust corridor. At that time, I had just graduated from the Yaoqi ship special class and served on Boundary Star for 2.5 years. I had just advanced to a high-level evolver. I am not bragging, but my evolution speed was not slow at that time, and my reputation was not small. Of course, I should be considered the type of people who accumulate a lot of experience and then burst out, and I was not very eye-catching at the beginning. It was not until I participated in the actual combat on Boundary Star that I found my own rhythm and quickly transformed from a middle-level evolver when I just served to a high-level evolver. I guess I'm a practical fighter. The kind of real fighting has the greatest stimulating effect on me. Let's get back to the point. After being broken through by the enemy's army, I followed my captain at the time and broke through and fled to the depths of the Stardust Corridor. Hearing this, Li Yu understood that Chen Kai-Ongzi should have obtained the inheritance related to the fifth era in the Stardust Corridor. After all, according to the information he had received before, the Stardust Corridor area itself is the core area of the fifth era. The heritage relics they discovered before contained a lot of illusions and soul knowledge. So, the instructor found a heritage relic of the fifth era while wondering. Li Yu said thoughtfully. Chen Kai-Ongzi shook his head and said, yes and no. Strictly speaking, I found a floating corpse. Floating corpse? Could it be a floating corpse from the fifth era? Li Yu's eyes moved slightly, but he didn't expect it to be this thing. If it is true, it is really another major discovery. After all, although they have captured the resurrected, this resurrected has not yet shown its true physical appearance. Apart from Dan Chenli, the armored man from the second era, no similar corpses have been found so far, according to what Li Yu has found in various document archives. Chen Kai-Ongzi said, according to the corresponding situation of the divine era that is being refreshed now, it is most likely from the fifth era. Of course, I didn't know it at the time. At that time, our team was chased and had to disperse. When I found the floating corpse, it was floating in the outer gravitational circle of Planet 72, frozen into a small ice block, which looked similar to a small meteorite and was very inconspicuous. If I hadn't happened to need a rest at the time to relieve the divine load and stay there for a while, I wouldn't have found the thing. The floating corpse is about 3 or 4 meters high, and it also has limbs and facial features. The skin is gray and black, shriveled, as if dehydrated. At that time, I used divine energy to radiate, dissolve the ice block, and thaw it. Now that I think about it, I was also a newborn calf who was not afraid of a tiger. I was not afraid of this thing reviving and giving me a hard blow. Hearing this, Li Yu couldn't help but nodded and said, Instructor, how old were you at that time? It's so vigorous, Chen Kai-Ongzi said. It should be 2 years older than you are now. 22. Li Yu nodded slightly. A 22-year-old upper evolutionist? This is indeed amazing. Although after reaching the upper level, the divine genes will become more and more difficult to condense, and the speed will definitely decline. But being able to rise to the upper level at the age of 22 is indeed a good speed. As far as Li Yu knows now, the group of people who participated in the Youth Mecha Master competition with him last time were probably about the same age as Ning Fiao when he was promoted to the upper level. Lei Guangyao was almost there, and Lin Xiu was a little bit behind. No wonder Chen Kai-Ongzi said that she had been to the ruins of the earth a long time ago, and she also had the confidence to take charge of various activities inside and outside the Yaoqi ship, and was respected by many people. It turns out that she was really awesome in the past. Before, she was probably among the top few in a certain session of the youth competition. Although she can't compare with Li Yi, she is also proud of a group of young Mecha Masters. Now at this age, she has become a master of the 3rd stage of the heavenly level, with the strength of the 5th stage, and a trump card, which is far beyond her peers. Chen Kai-Ongzi continued to explain. Fortunately, after the floating corpse was thawed, although there were some abnormalities, it was not dangerous. After the floating corpse was thawed, it began to transmit thoughts to me, and the thought stamp pierced into my head, but it was not very strong. I could withstand it, but it was really uncomfortable after a long time. Fortunately, the thought was gradually weakening, and I realized that I had thought the thing, which was both liberating it, but it also undoubtedly made the thought have to face the problem of rapid loss of life. I was worried about problems, so I sealed the floating corpse temporarily. Later, during the Xianheng Star War, General Lin took action and pushed the front line back. During that period, I reported the floating corpse to the upper level, which alarmed the upper level. Hearing this, Li Yu was a little surprised. He originally thought that Chen Kai-Ongzi had kept this matter secret and did not pass it on. After all, The tone of Chen Kaiyongzi's speech several times before seemed to be that this secret belonged to her alone. Seeing Li Yu's expression, Chen Kaiyongzi smiled and said, "Do you think I won't pass the information up?" Li Yu nodded and said, "Indeed, from what the instructor said before, it seems that this secret of yours is between you and me." Chen Kaiyongzi's eyes widened immediately and said, "You are underestimating me, aren't you? What exactly am I like in your eyes?" Li Yu smiled and changed the subject. "Instructor, why don't you continue to explain the situation?" Chen Kaiyongzi said, "Okay, I'll ask you later." After the information was passed up, I met several powerful people, 2 federal bosses, General Lin, and a female powerful person. This female powerful person is proficient in soul characteristics and directly broke these thought stamps for me. From this, I understood some of the intelligence information conveyed in the thought stamps. However, because we did not decipher the language of the Star Clan at that time, there were many problems in understanding this intelligence information. The first thing deciphered was a special cultivation method and the corresponding information about the identity of the floating corpse. Li Yu said, "Is this cultivation method the reason why the instructor has been hiding it after the Battle of Xianheng Star?" Chapter 287 Old Secret. "Hide, you also know that I am hiding." Chen Kaiyongzi was surprised for a moment, then smiled. "Well, I should be hiding it well," Li Yu said. "It's well hidden. Only the people in the Mecha team on the ship know that you are hiding your strength." Instructor, what do you mean that only the people in the Mecha team know? Isn't this equivalent to knowing everyone I know? Chen Kaiyongzi almost couldn't hold it back. "That's not right. The perception of my strength should be just that of an ordinary upper-level Mecha master, right?" Li Yu shook his head and said, "The instructor has no self-awareness. As far as I know, most people, including the trainees of the Special Class 1 and 2, think that the instructor has great ambitions and far-reaching plans, and will definitely become the commander of the federal-level Mecha Corps. Everyone thinks that the instructor must be above the upper level, and there is a high probability that he is a 3-in-1, or a heavenly level. Even if he is not a heavenly level, he must be the best of the 3-in-1. Moreover, this perception is very common." Chen Kaiyongzi didn't expect that she was actually the emperor's new clothes. She always thought that she hid her strength very well. She thought she had good insight, but she had never felt the respect that acquaintances showed her after hiding her strength. She opened her mouth and said, "I don't believe it. If someone really thought I was already a heavenly rank, I wouldn't have that attitude." Although she said so, she recalled some details of the past and really felt that it was possible. Li Yu said, "But in fact, the instructor can have a say in our ship, no matter what he does, or in front of Captain Tang, right? Other instructors like Liang and Ma, don't they have this face? And do the instructors really think that they have such a position in the ship because of their good qualifications in the past?" Chen Kaiyongzi's face began to blush, and a trace of blood ran through her fair ears. "It seems to be true," she said sullenly. Li Yu looked at Chen Kaiyongzi's confused expression and found it very strange. He couldn't help laughing and said, "I always thought that the instructor knew that they knew you were hiding your strength, so you hid it twice." Chen Kaiyongzi narrowed her eyes and said, "Okay, let's stop talking about this topic. I will continue to talk about the discovery on the floating corpse." Li Yu stopped when he saw that it was going well, and didn't laugh at Chen Kaiyongzi too much. After all, she didn't do anything wrong. The acquaintances in the Mecha team tacitly didn't ask her more questions, which also led to Chen Kaiyongzi being passively kept in the dark, thinking that she really hid it well. But in fact, from Chen Kaiyongzi's various styles of behavior, she only hid her strength, but didn't hide the fact that she was very powerful. Hiding half is like hiding. Li Yu smiled and said, "Okay, instructor, please continue with the key points." Chen Kaiyongzi coughed lightly and said, "After being deciphered by the relevant personnel at the upper level, that set of cultivation methods is the one I am currently implementing. Normally speaking, the more appropriate method of advancing to the heavenly rank that we humans have developed is a single sequence, or the continuous upgrading of the corresponding divinity to increase the radiation level, condense more divine genes, and then form a divine nucleus, and the set of heavenly god mecha plan that you are currently implementing is to condense enough divine genes before the heavenly rank, and strive to condense 3 cores in one fell swoop, and use the early time in exchange for the rapid improvement in the heavenly rank period, right?" Li Yu nodded. Chen Kaiyongzi continued, "These 2 methods have their own advantages and disadvantages, but the consensus is that top-level geniuses are suitable for the God Mecha project, while ordinary types should be promoted to the heavenly rank first, And the third method provided by the floating corpse is a method called planting the virtual. Li Yu repeated, planting the virtual. Chen Kai-ongzi said, that's right. Through a technique of pinching the real into the virtual, clones are planted. With more clones, the time that can be exposed to divine radiation will be doubled, and it will not be easily interfered by different types of divine genes. When the divine genes condensed by the clones are almost at their limit, they can be returned to their original self. Because the clones and the main body are of the same origin, the divine genes can be transplanted quickly. Similarly, the heavenly rank characteristics can also be cultivated in this way. Li Yu's eyes lit up when he heard it. This method seems to be pretty good. Are there any disadvantages? Chen Kai-ongzi shook his head and said, there must be disadvantages, but it's okay for me so far. So far, I have condensed 2 clones from my experiments, one of which has completed its return, allowing me to quickly condense 3 heavenly rank characteristics. The other one has not been moved yet, and is still waiting for the genetic test feedback from the laboratory. I was also a member of the God Mecha project at the beginning. However, due to the emergence of the seed virtual method, I learned the details in the steel seal fragments, and realized the opportunity, so I volunteered to become an experimenter of that method, and my instructor is the only female strongest among our human beings, who specializes in the characteristics and knowledge of the soul. As for the name, I won't say it. You are now at a higher level than me, and you will definitely know it in the future. Li Yu understood, because it was not certain whether the method obtained from the floating corpse was feasible and whether there were problems in promotion, so there is only one experimenter. Instructor, Chen Kai-ongzi shook her head and said, no, in fact, there were more than a dozen experimenters who volunteered to try this method at the beginning, all of whom were some of the best in the Youth Mecha Master competition at the time. However, now 18 years have passed, and I am the only one who has successfully condensed a clone, so, the biggest disadvantage is probably the failure of cultivation, which delays the golden time for cultivation, but if it succeeds, I haven't felt any obvious disadvantages yet. The only thing is the control of the clone, which is more mentally exhausting. The clone can share my soul self, that is, share the subconscious. As long as I input some thoughts, it can automatically train and automatically receive divine radiation, but the clone is not smart enough. If I want to have intelligent action, I guess I still lack some key methods. The floating corpse at that time probably still had some reservations. Li Yu nodded slightly. This cultivation method is indeed very much in the style of the 5th era. Whether it is creating a clone or using the clone to speed up the evolution speed, etc., the roots of these methods are all in the 5th era's technology of pinching the virtual into the real and artificial soul. For example, the resurrected person they have captured so far has at least 3 clones. There may be clones hidden in other places, but they are hidden very deeply and are not discovered by humans for the time being. Even the existence that is currently parasitic in Zhang Shengfang's body may be just a part of the clone. Moreover, if he can also use this method, then the speed of improvement may be increased by 1 level, and he can quickly condense the divine gene he wants. Thinking of this, Li Yu's heart moved and asked, so, is the floating corpse that the instructor found still there? What other information did you decipher at that time? For example, the identity, Chen Kai-ongzi said, it should still be there. The thought should still be sealed in the floating corpse. As for the identity, you will be shocked when you know it, because you probably know it. Chapter 288, Martial Saint. Li Yu asked curiously, I know your identity. As he was speaking, his heart moved slightly, and he suddenly realized, could the idea related to the 5th era be the idea that has been lurking in the 5th era's heritage ruins? Chen Kai-ongzi pursed his lips and smiled. Yes, that's right. That idea is most likely another branch of that mysterious idea, from the same source. Li Yu touched his chin and said, but why does the instructor know this? The authority to know about the heritage ruins has reached level 6, Chen Kai-ongzi shook his head and said, no, because I have level 7 authority, I can see the information and verify the guess. As for how I got this authority, it is naturally because I have accumulated enough combat merits and passed the test of strength, and have the 7th level attack power. Of course, my regular burst is only at level 5. Li Yu knew that the so-called 7th level strength was the move that Chen Kai-ongzi had just used to turn his divine will from virtual to real. So, instructor, did you get the move of transforming the divine will into tiger from the practice method of the floating corpse? Chen Kai-ongzi said, I practiced it based on the family's tiger strike style and combined it with this virtual technique. In essence, this is also a way to use divinity. You can think of it as a more complex divine character fighting skill. It is a powerful move that requires divine control, characteristic combination, and basic fighting skills. It is also the core of the 5th era's skills and tactics. The strongest people called this type of move divine characteristic skills, which is a brand new school of skills and tactics. It is also a niche school that developed independently in the 5th era. We have just discovered and inherited it. In terms of combat amplification, it is stronger than most heavenly combination skills. Of course, if there are those gifted heavenly masters, such as the current top 10 heavenly masters of our human race, their heavenly combination skills are also far superior to their peers, enough to achieve stronger combat power and lethality. If you advance to the heavenly level in the future, you will also need to think about these moves, because the later you get, the slower your cultivation progress will be. It's not something that can be solved by enduring more radiation time. If you want to beat your peers, you must spend more time studying these skills and tactics, especially the heavenly rank tricks and the divine will characteristic skills I just mentioned. They are all indispensable means to win in the future. Liu nodded slightly. He thought of the 3 resurrectionist clones he met in the Enlightenment Divine Mountain before. The tricks they displayed at that time also showed combat power, far beyond the ordinary heavenly rank high stage, most of which were also a kind of divine will characteristic skills. They fought with Zhang Shengfang for a long time without any signs of defeat, which shows how high the combat power increase is. Although this was partly due to Zhang Shengfang's holding back, it can also be seen how great the potential of the divine will characteristic skills is. So, if the heavenly rank tricks can be integrated with some divine will, can it produce the same amplification effect as you, instructor? Liu asked. Chen Kaiongzi nodded and said, almost. But do you know how to extract the divine will? Liu said. I was just about to ask. Chen Kaiongzi raised 3 fingers and explained, this is also what my teacher has concluded after so many years of research on various materials. The first method is to directly extract it from the divinity that one possesses. This method generally requires reaching a high level of the heavenly rank and possessing sufficiently high heavenly rank characteristics before it can be realized. Because every time humans add a heavenly rank characteristic, the divinity will be purified once. When it is purified more than 7 or 8 times, the corresponding original divine will slowly manifest in the divinity. For example, my divinity of the wind god sequence, then what is manifested is the original divine will of the wind god. Of course, under normal circumstances, there is not much original divine will that can be refined after the 7th or 8th level of the heavenly rank, and it is not very useful in actual combat. Therefore, there are still very few heavenly rank tricks that can display the power of divine will at the 7th or 8th level of the heavenly rank. Like the current top 10 heavenly ranks in our federation, it is estimated that not everyone has the ability to refine the original divine will. According to my observation, the only ones who truly possess the ability to refine divine will are probably Lu, He, and Tan. The others, most of them have this ability, but have not been able to integrate it into their own heavenly skills to achieve further enhancement of their combat power. By the way, the silver powerhouses of the Star Clan, or the Slaughter Clan, do not possess this kind of ability. So, this is also the main reason why our high-level heavenly masters are stronger than them in combat power as a whole. The divine gifts that we humans possess are indeed extraordinary. Hearing this, Liu nodded slightly. It seems that this is the reason why Li Guangzi and others can have a high status among the group of the strongest. What about the second method? Instructor, you didn't use the first method to achieve it, did you? Chen Kaiongzi nodded and said, yes. My second method is to use the cultivation method of seeding the void. The reason why I can materialize the original divine will of the god of wind in advance is also because of the high-level means of seeding the void. It is only possible to achieve it if I can train 2 clones at least, Liu said thoughtfully. Then the colorful giant tiger you just materialized has nothing to do with your tiger strike flow fighting skills, Chen Kaiongzi said. Yes, but it's not the kind of relationship you think. Although I materialized the giant tiger because the original divine will of the god of wind sequence is this image. But if the tiger strike flow is practiced to the top, according to the historical records of our family, it is possible to practice the divine will of the tiger. Practicing a fighting skill to the divine will stage can extract the divine will. This is also the third method my teacher mentioned. However, there hasn't been such a person in our family for hundreds of years. Even if there is, it is estimated that only our Chen family's ancestor, Chen Liu Wangwushan, has achieved this step. Hearing this, Liu's eyes moved slightly. Instructor, are you saying that Chenlu Wangwusheng is the ancestor of your Chen family? Didn't you say before that this Chenlu Wangwusheng is very likely the strong man needle in the records of the gourd man? Chen Kaiongzi nodded. Yes, there is no contradiction between the two, right? The reason why I first suspected that Chenlu Wangwusheng was needle was naturally because I was curious about the story of this ancestor, so I conducted a lot of research. Li Yu was speechless. Well, rather than saying that Chen Kaiongzi hid it from him, it would be better to say that he had not thought of this before, and then asked Chen Kaiongzi for confirmation. Things actually came back. Chen Kaiongzi's ancestor was actually this Chenlu Wangwusheng, the only recorded physical strongman before the interstellar divine era in human history, and a super strongman with all kinds of magical powers. Then, instructor, does your tiger strike style have other secrets? Chen Kaiongzi pondered. I'm not sure. I've practiced to this level and have practiced everything I can. Maybe I'm limited by my fighting skills and can't see anything. If it were you, maybe you could see something. Do you want to learn the whole set? Li Yu said. Didn't the instructor say that I have to be your son-in-law of the Chen family to learn it all? Chapter 289, Secret Skill. Oh, I actually forgot about this. Chen Kaiongzi knocked his head. Li Yu was speechless. He could even forget this. He smiled and said, then I can't learn it. Chen Kaiongzi pondered, and after a moment, he said, then do you want to learn? When she spoke, her eyes hesitated, and her eyeballs flickered to the left, as if she was asking the question against her will. Li Yu blinked his eyes. What's the matter with old Chen? Do you want me to learn, or don't you want me to learn? His thoughts flashed through his mind, but he didn't hesitate, and smiled. Of course I want to learn. Chen Kaiongzi exhaled. Okay, since you want to learn, then I will teach you. Let me make it clear first, I will teach you because of our friendship. Besides, I also want to see what you can understand with your ability. As for the son-in-law or not, just take it as a joke. I am a generation and a half older than you, it's not suitable. Old Chen is actually afraid of the age gap? Li Yu couldn't tell whether it was an excuse or the truth for a moment, so he smiled and said, then the instructor likes people older than him. That's not the case either. Chen Kaiongzi frowned and thought for a while, seemed a little distressed, and said, to be honest, I haven't thought about this problem. I am naturally not fond of thinking about these messy things about men and women. When the great cause of mankind is completed and the alien threat is settled, we will talk about it later. While we have time now, I will teach you the full set of Tiger Strike flow to see if you can understand anything, but remember to keep it secret and don't spread it randomly. I only teach you, even if the teacher asks, I won't tell you. Li Yu heard this, his thoughts turned a few times, and he smiled. Of course, after all, it is the instructor's family heirloom. I will naturally cherish it. By the way, if I really understand something, the instructor has no reward? Chen Kaiongzi slammed the table and said, I say, aren't you getting too much by the wayside? I've taught you all my family's secret skills. What other reward do you want? Do you really want me to marry you? No, I'm so much older than you. Li Yu smiled and said, Instructor, I didn't say I want to marry you. Why are you in such a hurry? Chen Kaiongzi's earlobes turned slightly red, blooming like the color of rose petals, and she looked a little more embarrassed, as if she realized that she had said the wrong thing. You don't care. It just won't work. Li Yu sighed. Well, the instructor is being unreasonable today. Alice, after the instructor was promoted to the heavenly rank, his confidence is really extraordinary. He even looks down on me, a soldier who is not even at the heavenly rank. Chen Kaiongzi immediately punched Li Yi. You kid are still playing tricks on me? Do you still want to learn my family's unique skills? Li Yi smiled and said, learn. I must learn. Thank you instructor for giving me this opportunity to learn. I am really grateful. Chen Kaiongzi, if you play tricks on me again, I will ignore you. Li Yu looked at Chen Kaiongzi's face and found that the embarrassment before was gone, so he stopped making jokes. Okay instructor, I'm not joking, let's get started. Chen Kaiongzi also threw away the strange emotions just now, and her voice began to become serious. Then, I will teach from the beginning. Remember to watch carefully. She posed in a half-squat horse stance. With her left arm extended forward, her right elbow against her ribs, her shoulders lowered and her neck stretched, and the strange light in her eyes slowly converged. The momentum suddenly changed. The whole person, from the sharp edge of a strong man, quickly switched to a simple and ordinary state. The slender body and beautiful face also seemed to quickly become ordinary. Obviously, The overall appearance has not changed much, but such an amazing hiding effect has appeared. Moreover, Liu can feel that there is only the flow of divinity, but no characteristics are activated. Obviously, it is not the same as the dust characteristics activated by Chen Kai-ongzi before. Liu's eyes moved slightly, and he felt that this tiger strike flow was indeed unique and mysterious when practiced so seriously. It was completely different from the various moves learned in the Yaoqi ship and the various fighting skills experienced in the memory fragments. Moreover, judging from its effectiveness, it is indeed a unique skill that can fully mobilize divinity. Its mobilization efficiency is definitely stronger than the 7 divine personality fighting skills that were transmitted from the main ship before. Even the strongest enemy-breaking effect of the 7 divine personality fighting skills, the shock-penetrating ice fist, is not as good as the tiger hiding style displayed by Chen Kai-ongzi. Liu immediately understood that the tiger strike style that Chen Kai-ongzi had shown before, as well as the part that he had imitated, were definitely incomplete versions, or Chen Kai-ongzi had deliberately left several tricks. This made him more focused. Perhaps, from Chen Kai-ongzi's family-inherited skills, he could really learn some methods of turning the virtual into the real. This is the first move, the tiger hiding style. According to records and textual research, the tiger strike style was created by the ancestor after he witnessed a tiger-shaped divine creature one day, and then imitated and studied it. The tiger is not an ordinary tiger, but a divine giant tiger. Most likely it is a supergiant tiger that has extracted the divine will. Therefore, every move contains great divine power. The tiger's hiding is to lurk before hunting, hiding one's traces and hiding one's form, and gathering one's strength in an instant. Your fighting skills are profound and profound. You can try to practice it directly to see if you can practice other mysteries. When you have learned the whole set, I will teach you the art of seeding the void. Don't let me down, kid. Just as Liu and Chen Kai-ongzi were studying and communicating in depth. On the other side of the lunar fortress, Zhao He Guangzi and others began to count the people who needed to be interrogated for intelligence in this battle. The most important of them was Heng Suor, the golden strongman of the Star Clan. This person was the main instigator of this battle. He was an important figure second only to the ancestor of the Star Clan. Now that Lin Jianlong and the others have not returned from the pursuit, the battle is temporarily suspended. Zhao He and He Guangzi also focus on interrogating intelligence. In particular, see if they can obtain the corresponding information to rescue Zhang Shengfen. However, Heng Suor is a top-level gold warrior after all. His physical defense-breaking ability is comparable to that of a 100-meter mecha, and his mobility is even more outstanding. It is not an easy task to interrogate him. Not to mention that the frozen state will not be stable for long, and the other party is very likely to wake up and directly mobilize the divinity to break the blockade. For now, the lunar fortress they are in is not suitable for interrogating top-level gold warriors. If the other party escapes by accident, it will directly cause huge damage inside the fortress, and the damage will be even more difficult to estimate. Fortunately, He Guangzi had a solution. He suggested, let Lao Lu do it. His Sea King Mecha is good at various range freezing operations. Let him create a freezing area so that Heng Suo can only move in this area. Also, I noticed before that Li Yi has mastered a kind of ice prison-like characteristics that can greatly weaken the abilities of the people inside. It just happens to cooperate with Lao Lu's ability to directly control Heng Suo's power area. Chapter 290 Enlightenment. Did Lao Lu and Lao Lin go to chase the Star Clan? Zhao He was a little surprised. He Guangzi said, on the way back, I received an observation report from the team left behind at the alien Stargate. They have discovered their divine flames on their way back, and it is estimated that they will reach the lunar fortress within 20 minutes. Zhao He frowned and asked, back so soon? How are the casualties? He Guangzi said, the divine mechas of Dean Duanmu and Chief Qin Bang have obvious signs of damage, but the situation is still acceptable, and there are no major casualties. Zhao He pondered and said, it seems that the results of their pursuit are not very smooth. Old Li, are you going to continue to advance your plan to attack the Scorching Star domain? He Guangzi did not hesitate and said firmly, of course. Zhao He was a little surprised. I thought you would hesitate, He Guangzi said in a deep voice. Even if they fail in the pursuit, it will not affect our further strategy against the Star Clan. One is to avenge the thousands of Mecha divisions and hundreds of thousands of backup personnel on Cheyenne Hang Star 18 years ago. The other is to ensure a stable and long-term peace for our human side. We must show the other powerful alien races our determination to maintain peace by force. We must also show those powerful races enough combat power to let them know that once they go to war with us, they will have to face a situation of no end to the death. Therefore, as long as the Star Clan has not been completely defeated and those golden strongmen are still jumping around, our battle is not over yet. We must first stabilize the country before we can resist foreign aggression. Before the Millennium disaster comes, we must get a more stable development environment. He Guangxi's tone was serious, his voice was firm, and his eyes stared at Zhao He, which made Zhao He feel Li Guangxi's unprecedented determination. Zhao He was silent for a moment, and he felt a little bit of a new look at Li Guangxi in his heart. Of course, it's not that Zhao He didn't recognize Li Guangxi's talent and excellence before. And it was the first time that Zhao He felt a kind of top human general level spirit and strategic determination from He Guangxi. In this situation, Zhao He had also asked some other masters he was familiar with, and most of them gave the judgment that they would not attack the Star Clan, keep the status quo, maintain the current situation of having the upper hand, and continue to let the human strongmen develop. This shows that with the end of the Battle of the Stargate Axis, the will of many masters to fight has subsided. This is understandable, but in Zhao He's view, this is undoubtedly a waste of a good strategic opportunity. A saying of a great man hundreds of years ago is still imprinted in Zhao He's heart at this moment. One punch is enough to prevent 100 punches from coming. As one of the core decision-makers of mankind, Zhao He has worked hard and shouldered the fate of billions of people. Naturally, he hopes to have strong teammates to support him. Now that he sees this kind of courage and pattern from He Guangxi, how can he not be happy? He immediately smiled. Old He, you are indeed a man who can do great things. After listening to your words, a big stone in my heart finally fell. A big stone in my heart, He Guangxi said thoughtfully. Deputy Minister Zhao. Are you referring to those opinions on ceasefire? Zhao He nodded and said, yes, you are the actual commander of the main force of the Border Star. If you are also disturbed by the opinions on ceasefire and don't want to push this matter forward, that would be worrying. He Guangxi smiled and said, don't worry, Deputy Minister Zhao, I must be the most determined advocate of war, because I have never thought that the Star Clan can easily give up after being defeated once. The two chatted briefly and turned back to the original topic of interrogating Hangsel. He Guangxi reminded, Deputy Director Zhao, I just proposed to let Laolu and Li Yi participate in this interrogation. Hearing this, Zhao He said, that's right, I almost forgot that the key is to get intelligence from Hangser. In this case, with Li Yi's current strength and achievements, he should slowly participate in the relevant affairs of our top decision-making layer. In the future, the second-generation successor should also be considered. He Guangxi nodded secretly when he saw Zhao He say this, and felt that Li Yi's status rose so fast. If it were other familiar but not yet in the vision of the top leaders, even if they had a few unique skills, it would probably not work well to recommend them in this occasion. After all, interrogating the top strongest of the clan is not an ordinary job. Freezing Zhang Shengfang can be said to be a matter of urgency. Now that most of the personnel have gathered at the Moon Fortress, they are quite calm. At this time, letting Li Yi participate in the interrogation of the top strongest of the Star Clan is naturally a recognition of Li Yi's status. He Guangxi smiled and said, okay, since you, Vice Minister Zhao, have spoken, I will call someone over directly. Zhao He nodded. He Guangxi immediately sent a call to Tong Yunshen. On the other side, Chen Kaiongzi had already practiced the main contents of the Tiger Strike style. In addition to the opening style and the Tiger Hiding style that Li Yi had mastered at the beginning, there were also 7 styles, including the Tiger Pound style, the Tiger Leap style, the Tiger Roar style, the Hungry Tiger Holding the Knife style, the Fierce Tiger Out of the Box style, the Thin Tiger Going Down the Mountain style, and the Heavenly Tiger Wind God style, a total of 9 styles. Each style is completely different from the incomplete version that Li Yi had seen before. The meaning is richer, and the efficiency of mobilizing the divinity is obviously higher. Moreover, Li Yi keenly discovered that when the divinity is mobilized to a certain extent, these 9 styles actually have a bonus effect on the condensation of the divinity gene. When Chen Kaiongzi practiced it once and explained the essence of it, Li Yi had memorized all the contents of Chen Kaiongzi's practice and understood its basic principles. With his current millimeter-level precision, it was not difficult to perfectly replicate it. Soon he performed all 9 moves. Sometimes he pounced, sometimes he roared, and sometimes he was like a tiger out of a cage. After each move, it seemed as if divinity slowly flowed out of his body, gathering on top of his head, forming the outline of a tiger. When the 9 moves were completed, the outline of the tiger had basically taken shape. The tiger was more than 10 meters long, with golden hair all over its body, black eyes, and colorful tiger stripes, which was faintly charming. Chen Kaiyongzi looked at this scene with surprise in his eyes. Your talent is really amazing. It's only been a few minutes and you've achieved this level. Li Yu maintained the state of the divine giant tiger, looked at Chen Kaiyongzi, and asked curiously, if this tiger strike flow fully mobilizes the divinity, the effect will be outstanding. Just like this, I feel that the efficiency of mobilizing the divinity is rapidly increasing. Instructor, what is the story of this divine giant tiger? Chen Kaiyongzi's eyes showed a complex look, and he explained, the divine giant tiger you materialized is essentially the prototype of my previous move. According to my previous understanding, since our Chen family entered the divine era, very few people have been able to materialize this divine giant tiger. Those who can reach this step are all masters who have practiced the 9 tiger strikes for decades. Even me, from elementary school to adulthood, can only reach this level after being exposed to the art of emptiness. You kid, you really opened my eyes. Fortunately, your divine giant tiger is just a prototype, not that outrageous. I can barely accept it. At this point, Chen Kaiyongzi gnashed his teeth and looked at Li Yi, feeling envious of Li Yi's talent. Li Yi touched his chin and said, is this thing so difficult? Chen Kaiyongzi's eyelids twitched slightly. Li Yi thought for a while and said, Instructor, you said that this is just a prototype, then what is the non-prototype like? Is it to make this divine giant tiger bigger and more vivid? Chen Kaiyongzi straightened his chest and said proudly, yes, that's exactly the idea. I spent 10 years practicing from the prototype to the level of several dozen meters, so that I have the lethality comparable to the high-level heavenly level. The teacher praised it highly. You can also try it in this way. You have a stronger comprehension and higher talent, so you can prepare for this move earlier. Basically, when your divine giant tiger is condensed to a level twice as large as my previous move, you can extract the divine will of the tiger. This can be one of your future efforts. According to the teacher, the core of the strongest people is the word divine will. Li Yu said, okay, then I'll try again to see how big this divine giant tiger can grow. Chen Kaiyongzi frowned and said, don't worry, you have just learned the 9th move, why not consolidate it? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 291 Perfection. Li Yu said, it's okay, I'll try it. As he said that, he practiced it for the second time. The movements were sometimes slow and sometimes fast, and soon he showed the essence far beyond the last time. Chen Kaiyongzi saw it, and the words that she wanted Li Yu to review and consolidate carefully were choked on her lips. She was secretly surprised and said, Li Yu is really not a human being. He can do it casually to a level that I can't do now. Fortunately, he is only good at understanding various force postures. If the divine control is so fierce, I'm afraid he may really master the true essence of the Tiger Strike 9 styles quickly. Although Chen Kaiyongzi had expected Li Yu's performance to be better than his master, she was still a little shocked by the speed. After all, this is different from other conventional skills. This is a skill that she can only master after she has practiced a technique of emptiness. This kid has emptied my family's unique skills so quickly. Do I really have to consider marrying Li Yi as my husband in the future? But, how can this be possible? For a moment, Chen Kaiyongzi's mind wandered. No, I have to stay calm. He's just a young man in his 20s, besides, my parents' bodies are still warm, how can I think about such messy things? She quickly rejected her thoughts and focused on observing Li Yi's movements. As she observed, she soon found that Li Yi gradually practiced the 9 Tiger Strike with a different flavor. Li Yi, on his side, also entered a state of self-consciousness during the practice. He had a clear feeling that the 9 Tiger Strike might have some different mysteries hidden deep inside. He needed to practice a few more times. He would definitely be able to comprehend something from this. Seeing his body moving like the wind, his feet stepping on the tiger's steps, his fists running fast, and his body seemed to have a solid tiger shape changing with each move, whistling, and leaping. With his current vision, he could naturally master the essence of the 9 Tiger Strike perfectly at a glance. However, He still needed to practice and familiarize himself with some tricks of mobilizing the divine nature. What he was carefully experiencing during these drills was not the technique of exerting force. Rather, it was the automatic flow of divinity during exerting force. This kind of experience was extremely rare. The 9 Tiger Strike styles was indeed a masterpiece of divine fighting skills. It contained the secret of the rapid flow of various divinities in the body, which made him realize a lot. After all, unlike the fighting skills that had already reached perfection, he was only at the mastery level in the control of divinity, and had not yet reached perfection. According to his current observation, the level of divinity control of most of the strong men on the human side remained at the mastery stage, which was similar to his. Among the strong men he had seen perform, not all of the strongest men had reached perfection in divinity control. The strongest men who performed well in this move were mainly Lin Jianlong, Qin Longquan, Zhao Hui, Duan Mushang, and the one at the heavenly level was He Guangzi. Among them, He Guangzi had actually practiced most of the techniques of divinity control to perfection. Like Tan Yaozu, his strength was not weak either, but it was mainly because his coordination characteristics were also innate concept characteristics. And after forming a combination of skills, the effect was extremely amazing. Therefore, among the high-level heavenly ranks, only He Guangzi can rub the divine energy cannon with his hands and shoot divine light bullets with his fingers, thereby forming a great physical destructive force. After all, even if a human reaches the high level of heavenly rank, the physical state of a human cannot completely break through the C-class mecha with a physical body. It needs the help of the heavenly rank characteristics to achieve the effect of breaking the defense. However, He Guangzi can break the mecha's defense without the help of the heavenly rank characteristics, which shows how strong his combat power is, overwhelming his peers. It can also be seen from this that if the related skill of divine control is fully practiced, the increase in strength is also extraordinary. For Li Yi, the threshold of divine control skills to reach perfection is just a layer of window paper, which may be broken at any time. After all, the focus of his recent memory fragment absorption is mainly on the subtle level fighting skills. He did not spend too much effort on the memory absorption of the skills of divine control. And this wave of Tiger Strike 9 styles has undoubtedly made up for his blank during this period of time. Not only that, as he practiced for the 10th time, the divine giant tiger condensed outside his body also continued to grow, from a height of more than 10 meters, to 20 meters, 30 meters, and constantly approaching a height of 40 meters. Li Yu knew that these divine giant tigers were essentially things that were transformed from his set of 9 tiger strikes that were gradually approaching the perfection of divine control. The higher the efficiency of the practice, the better the effect. Gradually, when he practiced for the 17th time, suddenly, buzz! The large amount of divine control skills that Li Yu had absorbed in his mind in the past quickly gathered and merged into one at this moment. Click! The memory quickly merged in his mind, and he seemed to have an epiphany, and felt that the control of divinity had reached an unprecedented state of smoothness. Boom! With his breakthrough, the Tiger Strike 9 style practice movements had another layer of essence, and it was lifelike. This expanding divine giant tiger continued to extract the divinity in his body and continued to grow. Not only that, the huge black eyeballs, the shiny golden fur, the bloody mouth and fangs as big as a giant basin, the thin tiger whiskers on both sides, and the Wang character pattern on the forehead were even clearer than the holographic projection. Above Li Yu's head, the giant tiger was more than dozens of meters high in the blink of an eye, and it raised its head and roared. Boom! Along with the roar, the fine dust on the ground of the entire training ground was violently shaken and kept shaking. Buzz buzz buzz! Not only that, the training stands of the equipment in various parts of the training ground were also constantly moving due to the violent vibration. Chen Kaiongzi stood in front of Li Yi, her ruddy lips slowly opened. She was shocked. How long has it been? How long has it been? In just less than 10 minutes, it has quickly approached the results of her more than 10 years of training? Is this a human? Is this still a human? After a while, Li Yi slowly stopped and carefully felt the various feelings brought by the perfection of the divine control skills just now. This set of Tiger Strike 9 styles is indeed extraordinary. As he practiced, the 45th divine gene in his body was stimulated and generated directly. Its speed was much faster than all his previous divine genes. Such efficiency shocked Li Yi's heart and made him more curious about the situation of Chen Liu Wang Wuxian. And he had a feeling that Tiger Strike 9 styles was not complete yet. It was not that Chen Kaiongzi kept it to himself, but Chen Kaiyongzi probably only knew the current content. At this moment, Li Yu's divine control was perfect, his power was subtle, and his vision was extraordinary. Naturally, he could see that Tiger Strike 9 Styles was not the real complete version of the unique skills. In his practice, he clearly felt a clear sense of unfinished business. The intention inside was high level, and there must be subsequent content involving higher levels. Could it be that Chen lost this kind of content in the inheritance? Looking at the way Chen Kaiyongzi just taught her, most of these things were not written down, but passed on by word of mouth. If someone fails to understand it in the intergenerational inheritance, it is hard to guarantee that some of the essence will be lost. Li Yu quickly thought of this possibility and frowned secretly. At this time, Chen Kaiyongzi came up and reached out to touch his body with an unbelievable look on his face, constantly groping, as if looking for something. Li Yu asked curiously, "Instructor, what are you looking for?" Chen Kaiyongzi said, "I want to see what your body is made of, and why you have achieved the results of my more than 10 years of training in just a dozen minutes." Chapter 292, Seed Void. Li Yu was speechless. "Okay, instructor, then after all this touching, did you gain anything?" Chen Kaiyongzi was reluctant to stop, with a thoughtful look on her face, and analyzed, "Your body is still relatively solid, and your muscles are full of strength. Even if you just touch it casually, you can feel some kind of subtle vibration force. Moreover, this vibration force can penetrate into my palm when it touches my hand, and go deep inside, causing me to tremble slightly. What kind of skill is this? Why have I never seen it before?" Vibration. Li Yu was stunned, and then explained, "Instructor, are you referring to my subtle power? This is the subtle body protection power that I automatically cultivated after my fighting skills reached the second realm above perfection. Under the protection of this subtle power, even if the physical body is suddenly attacked by a tyrannical attack, such as super strong particle guns, bombs and other attacks with extremely physical impact force, it can be automatically resolved. This is also a routine skill formed after my current daily training. You need to at least reach the subtle realm to achieve it." Chen Kaiyongzi originally wanted to learn from Li Yu after listening to his introduction. But when she heard that this was the second stage above perfection, she immediately gave up the idea. There was no way. She was still a little away from perfection in all kinds of power such as fighting skills. While she gave up the idea, she was secretly impressed in her heart. It turned out that Li Yu had reached the second stage above perfection. No wonder he could master the unique skills that she took a lot of time to master in just 10 minutes. Thinking of this, she said, "Your talent is indeed rare. Since I am free now, I will teach you the art of emptiness. This will also speed up the time for you to advance to the heavenly position. Thank you very much, instructor." Li Yu would naturally not refuse. He also wanted to see what mysteries this mysterious cultivation method from the fifth era had. He had learned the soul secret method of vacuum purification in the inheritance spire before, and he could vaguely feel that the cultivation method of the fifth era was probably the most complete. In terms of level, it is second only to the first and second eras, and even in some areas, it can be on par with the first and second eras, or even surpass them. What's more, although his current divine gene condensation speed is fast, the current situation is becoming more and more complicated. If the evolution speed can be accelerated, it will naturally be better. There is no guarantee that a larger level of war will occur in the future, a war that even the strongest cannot cope with. Chen Kaiyongzi nodded and said, "However, I am the only one among us humans who has successfully practiced this kind of virtual art. You must be mentally prepared. Maybe there are some hidden conditions in this kind of virtual art, which cannot be overcome by saying that you have a strong comprehension ability. After all, this kind of virtual art was tried by some people with higher talents than me, but now there is no progress. Listen to the method first. If you feel there is a problem, remember to stop in time." Li Yu nodded and said, "Of course, instructor, please feel free to teach me." Chen Kaiyongzi nodded and immediately spoke slowly. "Now, I will tell you the relevant text that I translated at the beginning, word by word, and then I will also explain the various problems I encountered during my practice. Please listen carefully." Chen Kaiyongzi spent 15 minutes carefully telling Li Yu a text equivalent to 30,000 words. There was nothing mysterious about the 30,000 word content. It directly included what void is, why to plant void, how to plant void, what details to pay attention to, and how to continue to cultivate the clone after completion. At the same time, Li Yu also understood why this technology was called the art of planting void. Because in the general cognition of the fifth era, void is the subconscious of the soul, that is, the lowest level of the three selves of soul learning, self. The essence of the subconscious is nothingness, a collection of disordered information. Finding order from the disorder of the subconscious is the first step of planting void. As long as the orderly part of the subconscious is extracted, this part of information can be copied and used as the core of the clone. This part is also one of the most core parts of an intelligent creature. This is why Chen Kaixi said before that a clone planted by the art of planting void can share the subconscious and then use it to execute the main command. After being separated from the main body, the clone can continue to receive divine radiation and continue to practice, thereby accelerating the speed of the main body's divine gene condensation. The more order extracted from the subconscious, the stronger the command execution ability of the clone, and the better the effect of improving the efficiency of divine gene condensation. Of course, there is a problem here. Li Yu thought of it and asked directly, if there are enough ordered parts extracted from the subconscious, will this clone have autonomous consciousness and be out of control? Just like some AIs with too strong intelligence, Chen Kaixi said, this is also a problem that the content given by the floating corpse did not solve at the beginning. Therefore, when I plant the virtual, I usually get stuck at 20% of the extraction degree and stop refining. Li Yu nodded and said, I understand. Then what link did your classmates who practice this virtual art with you get stuck at? Chen Kaixi thought for a moment and said, if I remember correctly, most of them got stuck at the stage of extracting order from the soul subconscious. There is no good way to deal with this first stage. It all depends on whether you can calm down and feel the details deep in your subconscious mind. As long as you do this and continue to operate according to the method given in the art of void, I believe you can condense the orderly part of your subconscious mind into the core of a clone. As long as you pass this hurdle, you only need to follow the steps and cultivate the clone with divinity, and I believe you will succeed. You can try to complete the first step now. I'll help you watch and see how you progress. Li Yu nodded slightly and was about to try. Suddenly, a voice rang on the communicator. When he picked it up, it turned out to be He Guangzi. Li Yu took over and chatted briefly, then hung up. Instructor, it seems that I will have to ask you about the art of void next time. Chen Kaixi heard a few words and was surprised. You go to interrogate the strongest? Sure, you have made it this far. Li Yu shrugged and said, I actually hope they will ask me to do less work. After all, although some work can reveal a lot of secrets, it also wastes a lot of time. If it weren't for the fact that I was somewhat interested in the golden strongman they were going to interrogate, I would have to refuse and let them find someone else. Chen Kaixi smiled and said, you can show off, this is a good thing. There are not many opportunities to interrogate the strongest. I heard that the strongest of the star tribe we captured this time is still the best. Maybe we can get some secrets of aliens advancing to the strongest, or even demigods. I heard from the teacher before that at the strongest stage, the means of advancement of humans and aliens have also diverged. At present, it is still impossible to determine whether this differentiation is good or bad for us. But it will never be wrong to know more. After all, you don't want to stop at the strongest stage in the future, right? Chapter 293 Prison. After making another appointment with Chen Kaixi, Li Yu went to the core area of the Moon Fortress alone. In addition to a large number of long-range divine equipment, the Moon Fortress also has some special people imprisoned in the core area. These special people are all aliens or native humans who have committed serious crimes within the Federation. Especially before the early Human Federation established order, humans had a period of chaos in which chaebals and warlords colluded with each other to divide and occupy various important resource planets. This period of history is not long, only about 20 years. As far as Li Yu knows, this period is also the stage of the blowout of human informal evolutionists. At that time, any slightly larger power group could get some divine mechas to cultivate evolutionists. Even gradually a lot of local civil wars with far-reaching harm occurred, destroying many important resource planets. However, before various planets were destroyed by various powerful divine mechas, Qin Longquan and Zhao He turned out to be the first and second humans to advance to the strongest, and quickly eliminated all kinds of ambitious elements. Then, with strong strength and amazing appeal, they quickly changed the chaotic state of entities on various planets, killed the main culprits, put the accomplices into prison, quickly established a stable order, and built a Human Federation administrative system. From then on, Humans quickly entered a period of rapid development, forming the core operating logic of planetary autonomy and the transfer of military power to the deep space fleet. However, this system also left behind the tail of the planetary interest organizations that were too exclusive, which once led to internal strife and mutiny in the subsequent construction and operation of the deep space fleet. This kind of mutiny often subverts an entire main ship, causing the corresponding human border defense line node to fail directly. In order to cover up such a dark history, the pot was thrown to the cult. Although the destruction of each main ship has the shadow of the insertion of the cult behind it. But in essence, flies do not bite seamless eggs. Those destroyed main ships, without exception, were all caused by serious conflicts and contradictions among internal personnel, which gave the cult an opportunity to take advantage of. As for the hidden dangers of the cult, they are mainly hidden deep and have many strongholds, which have not been completely resolved yet. This period of chaotic war history is the intelligence that Li Yu took time to investigate and understand after reaching the 8th level of authority. The area he was going to this time was the core closed area of the lunar fortress. Along the way, he also looked up relevant information and learned that this area also held serious criminals from all aspects of human beings. Some prisoners were not sentenced to death or were still useful, so they were not executed directly. The entire closed area is very large, located in a large prison thousands of meters underground on the moon. This prison is a relic left over from a certain era of divine civilization. Because it was discovered to have a very strong divine sealing function, it was directly used as a detention area by human strongmen. At the same time, in order to allow those powerful rebels with good strength to play their surplus value, the prison has been transformed and coordinated by AI. And it also has the function of assigning various work tasks. For example, using their divinity to forge various small divine instruments, various small components of divine equipment, and so on. These jobs are not easy for mecha masters to do, but they are suitable for these powerful people serving sentences to do, which is just killing two birds with one stone. And some of those with great intelligence value are detained separately and await interrogation. At this moment, Li Yu took the underground elevator all the way, looking down from above, and saw a huge square building, like a crawling giant beast, standing below, occupying the entire field of vision. Outside the square building, there is a narrow passage that circles around the building like a swimming ring. At first glance, this prison is about 100 meters high, but it covers an area of 4 or 5 kilometers, which is very large. And it is completely enclosed by the black and hard square shell, and there is no ventilation. The elevator continued to go down, and Li Yu's line of sight began to be level with the square building. He saw one after another from the divine civilization of the second era. Translated, they are all words like town, seal, lock, circle, ban, imprisonment and so on. Each word is very old, and the writing method is more mysterious than the conventional divine words. Li Yu sensed with his subtle power, and soon felt that there was an extremely subtle divinity on the surface of these divine words slowly flowing, blooming with a faint fluorescence like fireflies. Seeing this, his heart shuddered slightly. Does the divine text here seem to have strange special powers? He was a little surprised. In his past decryption experience, he had never seen such text with special powers. Although he had seen some texts suspected of having divine power in the records, such cases were too rare and he did not take it seriously at first. Now that he saw it, he knew that it was true. Old Zhang once said that the divine text might contain the secrets of divine technology. It seems that his understanding of the divine text had already reached a high level. Old Zhang is deeply involved with the gourd man, so he must not be an ordinary expert. My decryption skills are perfect and I have reached the 8th level of authority. Maybe I can find time to investigate the situation of these people. Besides, Li Lulu is still in the kindling base and needs to find time to arrange to leave the Earth. Since she has a hunch that she will have problems staying on the Earth, she will follow her hunch and contact the kindling base for help as soon as possible. Now that the war is over, I can free up my hands to arrange these miscellaneous matters. These thoughts flashed by. Li Yu was about to call Chen Tongjian at the kindling base, but found that the surrounding signals were blocked. It seems that this prison has blocked the quantum signal. I can only wait until this matter is dealt with and then go out to do it. As he was thinking this, the elevator stopped and the elevator door automatically opened to both sides. He stepped out and saw a narrow road in front of him, and next to it was the hard, black and smooth shell of the prison. He followed the guidance of the AI, walked left after leaving the elevator, and walked about 500 meters, and finally saw a 4-meter-high closed entrance and exit. Just as he arrived at the entrance and exit, the small door in front of him was slowly pushed open with a bang. He Guangzi walked out. "You're just in time, let's go in from here." Li Yu didn't follow immediately, but said, "Chief He, the entrance and exit of this prison is so small, how can we transport the divine mecha in later?" He Guangzi said, "There is another large entrance and exit on the west side. I have arranged to transport your Pluto mecha in advance. Let's go. This trip will probably take us a long time, so it's better to act as soon as possible. I have another thing to do in the ruins of the earth, which may be more urgent. Can you send me a message here?" Li Yu thought for a moment and decided to arrange Li Lulu as soon as possible, just in case. If any trouble happened during the period when he was blocked from communication, it would be too late. Chapter 294, God of War. He Guangzi asked curiously, "What's the matter so urgent? Why didn't you send a message before?" Li Yu was a little embarrassed. He couldn't say that he had been fighting for days and almost forgot about Li Lulu in the kindling base. If he hadn't seen the divine words of the seal engraved on the prison, he really wouldn't have thought of it. Hey, something's wrong. With his memory, how could he easily overlook such an important person? Thinking of this, he was startled and thought to himself, "It's a bit weird, how could I forget Li Lulu? Could it be that the power of the fate sequence is taking effect?" He became alert and said immediately, "Commander He, the details are hard to explain. Anyway, it's extremely urgent." Seeing Li Yu's expression, He Guangzi said immediately, "Then follow me. There is a line for external communication in this Henshin prison, which can directly communicate with the outside world. At our speed, we can arrive in 1 minute. Hurry up." After saying that, he turned around and led the way. Henshin prison. Li Yu was surprised by the word and followed. That's right. This name is not recorded in any written document. It is a separate title for our senior executives. The reason for this name is very simple, because there is an artificial soul similar to AI in the core control hub inside the prison, which calls the name of this prison the Henshin prison. Of course, the name is translated, but that's what it means. By the way, these translation methods are deciphered based on the ant-fly language we provided before. Otherwise, we are currently unable to communicate with the soul that claims to be the controller of this Henshin prison, He Guangzi explained as he walked, and his speed was very fast. Li Yu followed closely, but did not affect the conversation, and asked, "If it has artificial soul technology, then is this god-suppressing prison actually a product of the 1st or 5th era?" He Guangzi said, "The situation may be more complicated than you think. This god-suppressing prison has undergone transformations in the 1st, 2nd, and 5th eras, and has all kinds of powerful sealing capabilities. It is probably also a prison of their era." Li Yu said, "That's strange. Since we have control over this god-suppressing prison, why do we need me to interrogate Hexel? Can't we just use the function of this god-suppressing prison?" He Guangzi said, "There is no way. There is only one top-level prisoner so far. It is unknown whether the god-suppressing prison can work. We still have to arrange for our people to go up and watch it. By the way, there are A-level and S-level upgrade pools inside this god-suppressing prison. Your Pluto mech can go there to upgrade directly. After the upgrade is completed, you can perform the mission." Li Yu was surprised. "Don't the places in the upgrade pool open until you have accumulated enough divinity? Am I so lucky?" He Guangzi smiled slightly. "Of course it's not that you're lucky, but that you have a lot of military merits. I just checked, and the amount of military merits under your name should have exceeded 3 million. This amount is so large that even I am drooling." Li Yu was surprised and said, 3 million military merits are a lot for ordinary people, but it shouldn't be a big deal for you, Chief He, right? Chief He, don't tell me that you can't even accumulate a few million military merits after guarding the border star for so many years." He estimated in his mind that this time, there were no less than 50 low and medium-level A-level mechas defeated, and countless B-level mechas. Adding the various divine mechas found in the Golden Yao division of the Earth Ruins, etc., he could indeed earn 2 million military merits. Adding his previous accumulation, the current total amount of military merits is indeed more than 3 million. He Guangzi shook his head and said, "Let me tell you this, after all these years of hard work, I have only saved up 3 million military merits after deducting various expenses." Li Yu said in disbelief, "Commander He, there is no need for you to lie to me. Even if you need military merits to exchange for various divine cores, you can't spend that much, right?" He Guangzi shrugged and said, You don't understand. In addition to exchanging for myself, I also have to exchange for Kyunging and other descendants. Moreover, I am also learning and understanding many of Baister's cutting-edge technologies. Some knowledge requires military merits to be purchased. Li Yu was surprised and said, Baister is so awesome? Even you have to buy some knowledge. As Li Yi's strength and status increased at this moment, his communication with He Guangzi became more casual. He Guangzi said, it's normal, because Baister, strictly speaking, is not a regular force in the Federation. We have more of a cooperative relationship with Baister. Of course, the value of our military exploits is also recognized there, and we can exchange and circulate there. This was the first time Li Yi heard of this situation. He wondered, why does Baister have such an independent status? He Guangzi said, the story behind this cannot be explained in a few words. You haven't been around Earth much, right? Li Yi saw that He Guangzi changed the subject, so he didn't ask any more questions and replied, I just walked around the periphery of a few cities, and I haven't walked much. He Guangzi smiled mysteriously, if you have a chance, you can go and see the development of cities on Earth. When you have the chance to go to Baister in the future, you will understand what is special about Baister by comparing the two. Li Yi had no choice but to put this question aside for the time being. Speaking of the central hub soul of this Henshin prison, how intelligent is it? Does it have any ulterior motives? At present, it is quite friendly to us humans. General Lin has done some operations before, so it shouldn't be a big problem. The two chatted and walked in the passage. There was a straight road ahead, stretching for an unknown number of meters, with no end in sight. The light inside the road was dim, and thanks to his extraordinary eyesight, he could see as clearly as day. On both sides of the passage were engraved divine words that even Li Yi could not understand. These divine words were the size of tadpoles, and were spread all over the sides of the passage and the dome like swimming fish. The font was intaglio, and the traces of the words were sunken inward. It can be seen that the strokes and turning points of each word were strong enough to penetrate the hard wall, very strong, and had a coherent and mysterious aura. Li Yi estimated that most of these words were from the early civilization of the First Era, which were more primitive, more complex, and obviously implied various divine characteristics. He had previously obtained some seemingly plausible memories of the Second Era from Guotao. In that memory, there was a scene of Katya deciphering the words of the First Era. Therefore, he also knew some of the words of the First Era, and could see that the words on the wall were older. If it weren't for the fact that the previously obtained deciphered memories of Katya were still too few and lacked materials for verification and comparison, otherwise, with his current perfect level deciphering ability, he would have been able to decipher the text of the First Era long ago. At this moment, the two people's chat finally ended, because the passage ahead was finally completed. In front of the two people, there was a stone door full of ancient characters from the First Era. The stone door was simple in style, 4 meters high and 3 meters wide, not too big or small. There were 5 big characters engraved on the plaque. These 5 characters were the characters of the Second Era, and Li Yi happened to recognize them. They were the 5 big characters of Xinxianyu Hub. The characters also concealed this extremely subtle characteristic power. The characters were like dragons and snakes, very eye-catching. Kalala. He Guangzi pushed the door, and a white light shone in front of the door. Li Yu narrowed his eyes slightly, and felt that what he saw in an instant was extremely majestic and shocking. He Guangzi smiled slightly and said, how about it? Do you think this scene is so similar to the Helen myths and legends? Chapter 295 Celestial Bodies. The front is open at first glance, but when you look again, you can see giant statues with faces showing hideous, painful, jealous, disgusted, angry, vicious and other twisted emotions, arranged at intervals, occupying both sides of the front wall. The statues are not very tall, all in the range of 30 or 40 meters. But the bare chest and abdomen, the densely gathered muscles like meat lumps, the thick and huge limbs, and the extremely powerful shapes all present a lifelike and monstrous power like a demon. The height of a mere D-class mecha, but it stands out with a tyrannical spirit that surpasses the S-class. The statues hold various torture instruments, such as gate knives, spikes, fire tongs or thorn hammers, a total of 18 types of torture instruments. Under the torture instruments, there are also statues of various creatures suffering torture. These creature statues are actually quite similar to the various tyrannical creatures that Li Yi saw in the battle crystal world of the Xingmeng division. He immediately understood that most of these creature statues were divine creatures that existed in the first and second eras, symbolizing the sanctions and punishments of the first and second divine eras. Although the entire land was majestic and magnificent, it was turbid and cold like the polar regions. When he stepped in, he felt as if he was in an ice and snow world constructed in an absolute zero environment, and even his soul felt as if it was blown through by the cold and freezing. Li Yu was really surprised. It was not because of anything else, but because the feeling this environment gave him was very similar to the characteristics of his ice prison. He had rich combat experience in this characteristic that could continuously weaken the divine and physical strength, but this was the first time he encountered it except for him. While thinking about this, he did not forget to respond to He Guangzi's question, "Commander He, this scene is indeed a bit like the hell in mythology." "No, I think the description in mythology cannot be compared with this Zhenshin prison. Zhenshin prison is indeed worthy of its name." Hearing this, He Guangzi continued to smile. "Then you can understand why I asked you to drive that C-class Pluto Mecha here," Li Yu said. "I understand, Commander. He has arranged it very well. The upgrade pool nurtured in this icy and hell-like environment must be the most suitable for my Pluto Mecha. If I upgrade it here, I think the Pluto Mecha will get a huge improvement." He Guangzi, "Not only that, I suspected at the beginning that all the planets around the Earth have discovered relics from the first and second eras of divinity. Only Pluto has no relics. Moreover, the size of Pluto is too small, as if most of it has been cut away." Hearing this, Li Yu was stunned. "What does this have to do with Pluto?" He Guangzi looked at Li Yu's expression and smiled. "It seems that you still don't understand why the Celestial God sequence is so rare and so powerful. In fact, if the Celestial God sequence can be upgraded in the upgrade pool contained in the corresponding celestial body, the characteristic increase will be greater. The most guaranteed result is that common characteristics can also be converted into characteristics with conceptual control power." Li Yu understood what He Guangzi meant at this time, and his eyes lit up. "Commander, he means that this Moon's central god prison is likely to be made from the main body of Pluto? So as long as I complete the upgrade of the Pluto Mecha here, I will have the opportunity to make the corresponding characteristic power of the Pluto Mecha have conceptual characteristics." He Guangzi smiled and nodded. "Yes, of course. This is just my guess. Whether it works depends on your luck." As they spoke, the two stepped through the huge passage where the statue was tortured and entered a compartment. Inside the compartment was an operation room with a classic mix of divine technology style and human technology style. The operation room was about the size of a basketball court, with light that was not dark or not, and shadows everywhere. There were several people with the strength of upper evolutionists in the center, who seemed to be operators, operating something on the monitoring pages. There were dense black boxes everywhere on the walls, and from time to time, fist-sized divine flames flashed out, shining brightly and dimly, illuminating the surrounding shadows. He Guangzi said, "This is the central control hub. You can directly communicate with the outside world and release your emergency information." As he said that, he walked under an operating table and quickly swiped the light screen page. Li Yu didn't bother to look at it more, and directly found the communication software in the light screen and dialed the contact information of Chen Tongjin at the Kinling base. Chen Tongjin quickly answered, "This is Chen Tongjin, the garrison officer of the Kinling base on Earth, confirming the access to the call signal of the Moon Fortress." Li Yu said, "Colonel Chen, it's me, Li Yu." Chen Tongjin was stunned. Li Yi. He took a look at the call level of the communication software, the S-level confidentiality department of the Moon Fortress. S-level confidentiality department? This kid is so fierce, he suddenly jumped to this level of department? Although Chen Tongjin was concerned about the situation of the war, it was not over yet, so a lot of combat intelligence had not been leaked or made public. He didn't know much about Li Yi's recent situation. Li Yi said, "Yes, I am now issuing you a personnel transfer mission with level 8 authority. The personnel will be transferred from the Kinling base on Earth to the Lunar Fortress. The safety of the personnel must be guaranteed and the mission must be completed as soon as possible. 2,000 military merits, do you accept it?" Chen Tongjin was stunned again, with a series of question marks on his face. Level 8 authority? His first reaction was to disbelieve it. But when he looked at the authority identification code sent to him, he had to believe it. At this time, Li Yu repeated again, "Do you accept it?" Chen Tongjin nodded quickly and said, I accept the transfer mission." 2,000 military merits, even for him with the strength of the heavenly position, may not be often obtained. A mere personnel transfer mission is still very profitable. Li Yu said, the person to be transferred is Li Lulu. How is she doing recently? Is there anything unusual? Chen Tongchen thought that Li Yu spent 2,000 war merits in one breath to let him perform this task, which means that Li Lulu is very important and may even have some important secrets. As for what Li Lulu said about her brother, he didn't believe it at all. Immediately, he replied, Captain Li. Li Lulu is in good condition at the moment. As for whether there is any abnormality, according to my recent observation, there is none for the time being. I will step up my care during the transfer and record the corresponding situation, Li Yu said. Okay, then thank you for your help. He called Li Lulu again, gave a few simple instructions, and then hung up. Li Lulu cooperated very well. When she heard that she could leave the Earth, she was also very surprised and said repeatedly, That's great, brother. I have been frightened these days and feel very uncomfortable. Now that I can leave the Earth, I should be much better. This made Li Yi more vigilant. People with the Fate Sequence talent claim to be frightened, which means that the crisis may come. He did not avoid He Guangzi with this action, so when Li Yi hung up, He Guangzi looked surprised and said, You haven't heard that you have a sister, right? Is this the little lover you kept on Earth? Li Yi was speechless. He didn't expect that He Guangzi, with thick eyebrows and big eyes, would be so gossipy. He shook his head and said, I haven't fallen to the point where I have to mobilize personnel to do private matters at such a critical juncture. He Guangzi touched his beard on his chin and said thoughtfully, It's just a joke. I can tell from your appearance that you are not a little lover. In my opinion, this woman is probably hiding some big secret, right? Li Yu nodded and said, Commander He, let me tell you this person is not an ordinary person. She is born with the ability to see destiny. He did not conceal the role of Li Lulu, but chose to conceal what the gourd man said at the beginning, that with the help of the people with the talent of the destiny sequence and the secret book of time, the truth can be obtained. The ability to watch fate. He Guangzi showed obvious surprise on his face. You actually found such a person? And you know the importance of this kind of ability. Li Yi's heart moved. From what He Guangzi said, could this ability to watch fate have other key uses? I don't quite understand what you mean, Chief He. What do you mean by I know the importance of this kind of ability? He Guangzi glanced at Li Yi. Have you ever thought about which type of ability is most likely to avoid the disaster that will destroy everything? Chapter 296 Upgrade. Li Yi was startled and asked curiously, Commander He means that the special ability of the destiny sequence can avoid disasters? Is this a conjecture, or is there any evidence? He Guangzi said, This is the judgment of General Lin. For example, no one knows what the nature of the disaster is, but according to the information currently obtained, there are still rules, right? Li Yu nodded. He was also the first person to translate the information of the second era, so he naturally understood what He Guangzi meant by the rules. That is, there is a specific triggering cause, which occurs once every 1 billion to 2 billion years, and is closely related to becoming a god and being related to the supreme level. Although it can only be determined that it is related to the above situations, it is impossible to determine how it is related. Its logic of sequence and cause and effect order are not very clear due to the ambiguity of the data records. However, what is the relationship between this and the destiny sequence? Could it be that the ability of the destiny sequence can control one's own destiny and directly avoid being directly descended by disasters and avoid disasters? Li Yu pondered. He Guangzi shook his head and said, That's not the case. Even if the destiny sequence can only see destiny, it has a great effect. By confirming the fate of multiple strong people with a lifespan of over 1,000 years, we can first determine whether the disaster will come in 1,000 years. Li Yu touched his chin and said, This is a way, but I don't think Li Lulu's ability can see such a far future. It's just that, is this the only way Chief He said it was used? Is there nothing more useful? He Guangzi said, The other is to screen people to see if we can find people related to the disaster to check other factors. Once more samples are accumulated, we can more or less figure out who are the people related to the disaster. Li Yu frowned and said, This is too much work. Maybe even if we watch Li Lulu to death, we may not be able to screen out all of them. It's not that he didn't think of using Li Lulu's ability to do something, but he never thought about the human wave tactics. Because in his opinion, Li Lulu is not an assembly line worker first, and it is impossible for her to always be a tool to see destiny. Secondly, he thought that there should be a proper way to use the destiny ability, rather than the method mentioned by He Guangzi, screening one by one. Because that requires more luck and is more impractical. He Guangzi was embarrassed, and his old face rarely turned red. Because Li Yu was right, if you only use the traversal tactics to use the destiny sequence holder, it is undoubtedly a failure. Fortunately, he was very thick-skinned and acted as if nothing had happened. He spread his hands and said, I haven't learned too many details from General Manager Lin. What I just told you is just my speculation. Don't worry about it. In short, I can tell you clearly that General Manager Lin means that the ability of destiny sequence is indispensable. Li Yu didn't insist on it and changed the subject. So, when exactly did General Manager Lin mention this? He Guangzi pondered. It was around the time when the Star Clan began to gather. We communicated about the intelligence you and Lao Zhang got on the Jin Yao division, and General Manager Lin raised this point. He was indeed a little vague at the time. But he also asked for clarity. We must find as many people with destiny sequence talents as possible. We have also summarized and checked the current drivers of destiny sequence mechas. At present, the total number does not exceed 10, and most of them have not yet broken through to the median. And the amazing thing is that these people are around 18 to 16 years old, which is also amazing. Hearing this, Li Yu thought of Zhang Zuoyuan. This girl is also one of the only 2 people he knows who has the fate sequence talent. He has not returned since he left the Yaoqi ship to participate in the Mecha Master competition. It has been more than half a year. I don't know if this girl has broken through to the middle position. According to his previous understanding of Zhang Zuoyuan's ability, she should not be able to exert any special power in her physical state. She must control the Bai Mecha to exert the power of destiny. Therefore, in terms of talent, most of them are far inferior to Li Lulu. After all, Li Lulu has the ability to clearly see the fate of most people before she starts to become an evolver. Even if this fate is vague, it can be roughly seen after all, which has opened up a lot of gaps with other people in the fate sequence. Suddenly, Li Yu had an idea. Commander you said that people with a destiny sequence gift are all around 18 years old, right? Then, are these people with a destiny sequence gift related to the destruction of Xianheng Star 18 years ago? At the beginning of Xianheng Star, I remember there were records in the data. There were also some relics of divine civilization that have not been explored yet, right? He Guangzi was stunned when he heard this. After thinking for a moment, he said, it may not be unrelated, but it may also be that the divine mechas of the destiny sequence were all produced by Xianheng Star. Because the destiny sequence mechas appeared, we found people with corresponding matching degrees. The cause and effect may be reversed. Li Yu touched his chin and said, maybe there will be an answer if I check the data later. Let's talk about these later. Let's upgrade my Pluto Mecha first. It just so happens that I also want to see if the Pluto Mecha can get any blessing from this Henshin prison. He Guangzi smiled and said, judging from your record and luck since your debut, this time is probably a safe bet. You have 3 solar system celestial divine mechas in your hands. You must upgrade them well and get as many blessings as possible. After the blessings, the quality of your divinity will also undergo a qualitative change and sublimate, which can increase the speed at which you condense your divine genes. The 2 did what they said. He Guangzi quickly led the way, taking Li Yu out of the control hub of the god-suppressing prison and to the entrance and exit of another divine mecha. 5 minutes later, the Pluto Mecha appeared in the sub-top space of the god-suppressing prison. The internal space of the god-suppressing prison is much larger than it looks from the outside, and there are many spatial faults inside, so even if Li Yi has extraordinary spatial thinking, he can't judge the general location. He can only rely on He Guangzi, a guy who is familiar with the road, to lead the way. In front of him, there is a wide mercury-like lake. The lake is vast, and the divinity on the water surface presents a gradient state of dark silver and dark blue. There is a visible divine aura steaming and turning on it, adding a mysterious atmosphere to the entire upgrade pool. This is the upgrade pool. Go down as soon as possible. The old road has arrived here. After you complete the upgrade, we will quickly interrogate Hengser. He Guangzi controlled the Thunder King mech and stood on the other side of the Pluto mech. The Pluto mech, which was less than 100 meters away, was like a child next to the Thunder King mech. Li Yu did not hesitate, and controlled the Pluto mech to move forward slowly, stepping into the upgrade pool step by step. With a clattering sound, the Pluto mech was quickly covered by the upgrade pool, and the pure black head armor gradually seeped into it. He Guangzi activated the detection system and stared closely at the flow of divinity around the upgrade pool. After a while, a trace of surprise gradually appeared in his eyes. What a strong divine vortex! Li Yi's foundation is really terrible. It's hard to imagine how he can complete such a fierce accumulation at this age. Not only that, he also noticed that as the Pluto mech stepped into the upgrade pool, the entire Henshin prison was slowly shaking. At first, he thought it was just the shock caused by some execution instruments inside. But as the tremor intensified, he soon discovered from the detection system that the central source of the tremor was exactly where the Pluto mecha sank in the upgrade pool. It seems that my guess is correct. This god-suppressing prison is indeed made with Pluto as the main body. Chapter 297, Soaring. The huge tremor continued. This time, not only He Guangzi felt it, but also the prisoners on other floors of this Henshin prison also felt it. They were unstable and terrified, thinking that there was an interstellar war in the outside world, and that war bases of the level of the Moon Fortress would be destroyed. At the same time, Zhao He also drove the Fire Dragon mech to quickly move to the second top floor of Henshin prison. Old He, what happened? Don't worry, it's just Li Yi upgrading his Pluto mech. Just upgrading? Such a big commotion, just caused by the upgrading of a mech? Are you kidding me, Old He? Deputy Director Zhao, see for yourself. Seeing is believing. He Guangzi didn't have the leisure to explain too much to Zhao He at this moment. He focused on the flow of divinity under the detection system and kept recording. He wanted to see how much blessing and amplification this Henshin prison could bring to the Pluto mech. And how exactly did this process work? He Guangzi's role in the human upper echelons is mainly reflected as a strategist and commander. At the same time, he also has an ability that he is good at, which is the analysis of divine technology. Among the high-level scholars on the human side, except for Duan Mushang, he has the most research results. Therefore, he knows so much about Zhang Shengfeng's various progress in the ruins on Earth. Even though he was commanding operations far away on the border star, he was always paying attention to various intelligence files. He would spend at least 2 hours every day refreshing and checking the exploration intelligence of various divine ruins, summarizing and organizing them at all times, and maintaining sensitivity to various intelligence. Seeing that Yi Guangzi did not answer again, Zhao He knew that Yi Guangzi had entered the analysis mode, so he did not ask any more questions, and also activated the detection system to observe. Soon, he showed a look of surprise on his face. Is this really caused by the upgrade of the Pluto mecha? A mere C-class mecha, or is there another secret in this Henshin prison? He Guangzi had not shared with others the speculation that this Henshin prison originated from Pluto before, so Zhao He did not know that the Pluto mecha and this Henshin prison were a perfect match. But now, he remembered the situation of seeing other powerful people in the celestial god sequence of mankind, and suddenly realized it, and asked again, Old He, could it be that this is the celestial blessing unique to the celestial god sequence? He Guangzi nodded, that's right, and judging from Li Yi's appearance, he has probably benefited a lot and eaten the first big cake of Pluto's accumulation of foundation for many years. The blessing of the celestial god sequence requires the consumption of high-quality divinity accumulated by a celestial body over the years. Like the celestial god sequence in the human party, such as Lu Yunsheng's Neptune mecha and Lin Wendong's Jupiter mecha, they have been blessed by the upgrade pools of Neptune and Jupiter respectively, so the mecha itself has a very strong amplification effect. This also makes the combat power of these two mechas far exceed their peers. However, because Neptune and Uranus have existed since the first era of divinity, each era has always had corresponding sequence mechas consuming foundation. Therefore, although Lu Yunsheng and Lin Wendong received a high level of blessing, they could only enjoy the high-quality divine heritage accumulated for one era. On the contrary, Pluto was made into a divine prison early on, and its divine heritage has been stored and not consumed by the Pluto sequence mecha. At this moment, it is enjoying the accumulation of 3 or 4 eras, so the benefits are naturally greater. Zhao He obviously understood the situation and said happily, that's right. The stronger the next generation is, the lighter the burden on our shoulders will be. But, Old He, why don't you sound particularly happy? He Guangzi said, what I'm more worried about now is that the foundation accumulated on Pluto is too high, and Li Yi can't receive it all at once, which is a pity. Zhao He frowned and said, if the god-suppressing prison is really the body of Pluto, then the accumulated celestial god foundation must have lasted for 3 or 4 eras, He Guangzi said, from the divine fluctuations observed so far, it is probably more than 3 eras, Zhao He sighed, 3 eras are a long time. If you think about it carefully, an era is at least more than 1 billion years apart. The high-quality divinity accumulated over such a long period of time is indeed extraordinary. How much Li Yi can accept depends on his luck. As long as the amount and quality obtained are higher than that of Lin Wenzhong, he will be qualified. If it is similar to Lao Lu, he will be successful. He Guangzi smiled slightly. Deputy Director Zhao still has too little expectation for Li Yi. In my opinion, Li Yi's harvest is at least the harvest of Lao Lu, and even more than that. The reason why the two took Lin Wendong and Lu Yansheng as examples is because these two are already the best in the celestial god sequence among humans. The celestial blessing they obtained at the beginning also surpassed the ordinary people, and possessed many powerful characteristics of the heavenly position. Even without Mecha, the pure flesh body is also a unique existence in the heavenly position. Because everyone believes that when Lin Wendong is promoted to the high stage of the heavenly position, he will also successfully become a person like the top 10 of the heavenly position. Zhao He said, although Li Yi has blazed a special trail and made up for his lack of combat power with various skills, he is still only at the upper level. His physical foundation is at most the third or fourth stage of the heavenly level. This is different from the blessing that Lin Wendong received when he was at the fifth stage. You should not have too high expectations, so as not to be disappointed. After all, Li Yi is already good enough. This is also a cautious remark, so He Guangzi did not refute it, but said, Deputy Director Zhao, let's wait and see. Zhao He smiled and said calmly, it's okay, the stronger the better, the more you slap me in the face, the better. Li Yi, as soon as he controlled the Pluto Mecha to enter the upgrade pool, felt an unprecedented surge of divinity, which squeezed the cockpit through the divinity Mecha and continuously dissipated inward. Unexpectedly, even he, who was in the cockpit, was constantly penetrated by this high-quality divinity. The Pluto sequence divinity gene in his body, stimulated by this high-quality Pluto divinity, was also constantly absorbing the divinity that dissipated into his body, improving its quality. The Pluto divine gene, which was originally only produced by sea-level divine radiation, has also been continuously increasing in strength. Li Yi can feel that the quality and total amount of the divinity stimulated by the Pluto divine gene have increased significantly, gradually comparable to those divine genes produced by A-level divine radiation. Not only that, he, who had just generated a divine gene a few hours ago, is still constantly generating new divine genes under this stimulation. 1, 2, 3, all of them are Pluto divine genes. In just half an hour, his Pluto divine genes reached 9, that is, the state of the single sequence initial position full. Such efficiency is terrifying. 27 is the state of the single sequence full quota. Seize this opportunity and see if we can speed up the progress. He immediately entered the state of self-consciousness and brain superlifting, and took the initiative to exert subtle power in the upgrade pool to accelerate the surrounding liquefied divinity to gather towards the Pluto Mecha. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 298 Memory. As Li Yi adjusted his state, the liquefied divinity in the upgrade pool formed a huge vortex, which continued to sweep inward. Rumble. Not only that, the upgrade pool continued to resonate with the Pluto Mecha, trembling, causing the entire Henshin prison to change violently. In the space, countless divinities were still converging towards the upgrade pool. The invisible and intangible divine energy appeared in the form of a dark blue mist, sweeping over like a big river and waves. Boom, boom, boom. He Guangzi and Zhao He were both a little shocked. Why is the noise getting bigger and bigger? Zhao He said, I didn't expect the slap in the face to come so quickly. Such a fierce tide of divinity appeared in just half an hour. It can be seen how strong the foundation of Li Yi's wave of attraction is. Lao Yi, what was the movement of Lao Lu last time? Is it to this extent? He Guangzi was also shocked. Even though he knew that this Henshin prison had gathered the accumulation of at least 3 eras of divinity, he did not expect Li Yi to have the ability to cause such a big fluctuation. He suppressed the tremor in his throat and took a breath, saying, Deputy Director Zhao, I can only tell you that the current performance is at least an order of magnitude stronger than Lao Lu's at that time. At that time, when Lao Lu was in the Divine Ruins upgrading pool on Neptune, there were continuous earthquakes and violent storms within 100 kilometers around him. There were signs that the divinity was vaporizing and visible, which had already amazed General Lin at the time, and he rated Lao Lu as the strongest human within 100 years, and now the divinity is atomized like tides, the wind is like waves, and the vibration is so severe that even large mechas like you and me are almost unstable. It's no ordinary scene that can be described. I wonder, in addition to his sufficient foundation, does Li Yi have other special characteristics that lead to such an effect? Zhao He exclaimed, this young man is getting more and more fierce. At this moment, Li Yi was in a very strange situation. The activation of the ego's essence and the brain's superlifting technique allowed him to reach the peak of the millimeter level. Coupled with the perfect level divine control skills, the divinity in the upgrade pool was also constantly being drawn, forming a huge divine vortex, medley swallowing the surrounding divinity and converging on the Pluto Mecha. At this moment, the Pluto Mecha was also growing in a state visible to the naked eye. The armor and bionic skin of various parts of the body also seemed to be refurbished, showing a bright color. The cockpit was now filled with dark blue atomized divinity, gradually forming a liquefied state. Li Yi's divine gene belonging to the Pluto sequence was also being generated. Although it was much slower than at the beginning, it was still growing firmly and continuously. However, as the liquefied divinity gathered in the cockpit, he began to feel a strong burden. The liquefaction of divinity means that the internal seed contains a strong internal pressure and has different characteristics from conventional divinity. Therefore, even though Li Yi's body is becoming stronger and stronger under the continuous generation of divine genes, he still feels a certain limit. There are only 14 Pluto divine genes now. Is it almost my limit? He was unwilling to miss such a good opportunity. There was only one other opportunity to generate multiple divine genes at once, except for the battle crystal world on Earth. Let's give it a try and see if I can induce a higher quality of divine penetration by stimulating the Pluto divine genes with all my strength. With a slight movement of his mind, Li Yi tried to stimulate the 14 divine genes that belonged to the Pluto sequence and activated the power of the characteristics. Soon, the absolute 0-degree, ice prison, and gravity characteristics were all activated. Among the 7 newly generated genes, there were 6 ice prison characteristics and 1 gravity characteristic. This was also his second gravity characteristic. Although the sources were different and there were slight differences in the process of activating the characteristics, the overall effect was not much different. Soon, as he activated the Pluto divine characteristics throughout his body, the situation really developed in the direction he expected. Boom! Countless high-quality Pluto divinities gathered directly. Deep inside his body, the Pluto sequence divine genes soared again. Not only that, a large number of memory fragments he had never seen before were also refreshed in his dream plane. These memory fragments clearly carried some ancient aura, and the color was deep and dark, like a heavy lead ball. As soon as they were refreshed, they hit the dream plane, creating palm-sized pits. Snap, snap, snap. He didn't care to see what these memory fragments were at the moment. He could only activate the 3.2 burst skills, and all parts of his body, deformation, super elasticity, microelectricity, freezing, high temperature, friction and other characteristics were activated, constantly strengthening the state of his body to resist the increasing pressure. The 15th, the 16th. Finally, he reached his limit. It's over, Zhao He asked hurriedly. Oldie, how long did Li Yi persist in total? He came a little later and didn't know exactly when Li Yi entered. He Guangzi let out a long breath. From the time Li Yi entered the upgrade pool, he persisted for a total of 2 hours and 12 minutes. This data is definitely the first in the past A-level upgrade pools of our human beings. Hiss. Zhao He's face was wooden, and he muttered, how long did General Lin last when he used the A-level upgrade pool? 1.5 hours, right. He had already overestimated Li Yi as much as possible, but he didn't expect that Li Yi still showed such amazing data. Even if Li Yi directly upgraded to C-level Mecha, he would have more room for growth. But this time is not wasted, and it will also put a load on the driver. Therefore, how long he can last can basically show what kind of load elasticity the driver has at the A level. And this can basically predict the amazing potential that Li Yi has. As for surpassing Lu Yunsheng at the beginning, this is naturally a fact that is set in stone. When the two were surprised, accompanied by the sound of the liquid flowing, the huge vortex outside the upgrade pool was slowly subsiding. Immediately afterwards, a pure black head armor emerged from the dark blue liquid surface, and then moved forward, gradually revealing a larger pure black nose and wide fuselage. Then, there were the legs that were comparable to Optimus Prime. The divine mecha that came out was 267 meters high. This height is already a height that can be controlled by a pilot of the 7th or 8th stage of the A level. He Guangzi, fuck, Zhao He smiled bitterly. For a moment, the two of them had a sense of deja vu, as if the 12-year-old 1.6 meter tall kid from the neighbor's house had suddenly grown to 2 meters tall overnight. They were all a little speechless. After all, even if Li Yi had driven a 220-meter Gaia mecha before, the height gap between him and their mecha was still quite large. But now at this height, he has actually stepped into their level. After a while, Zhao He spoke first, shaking his head and smiling helplessly. This is really the Yangtze River behind the waves pushing the front waves, and the front waves died on the beach. He Guangzi was more or less more than Zhao He expected. At this moment, he had calmed down and carefully examined the Pluto mecha, and said, Li Yi, it seems that you have gained a lot. Tell me, how many conceptual features have you come up with in total? Chapter 299 Amazing. The newly unveiled Pluto mecha has changed a lot. The whole body color is still pure black, but the outermost layer of armor and the exposed body shell under the armor are not only brighter in color, but also have more colorful colors. The so-called colorful black is exactly what describes the Pluto mecha at this moment. The body proportions are as slender and well-proportioned as before, and the bionic muscle lines of the two arms are slightly curved and angular. Under the dark light of the entire top floor of this Henshin prison, the clear body lines can still be seen, which is very neat. The relative proportion of this armor has also been thickened by several points, from the original speed-type armor to balanced armor. The armor plates of the arm armor, knee armor, shoulder armor, chest armor, etc. have all changed from the previous slender and neat type to thick and round type. Obviously, with the increase in size, the role of speed-type armor has been minimal. In battles above the high-level A level, the speed advantage is already difficult to reflect by reducing the load. In this regard, the upgrade program built into the Divine Mecha also automatically chose to upgrade to balanced armor. However, although the armor was thickened, the proportion of the Pluto Mecha itself was slender enough, so the thickening of the armor did not affect its overall beauty. Instead, it added a few points of majestic atmosphere, like a super god standing in the divine mist that had not yet completely disappeared. In that extremely majestic outline, a line of red light shot out from the position of the eyes, penetrated the divine mist, and fell on the Fire Dragon Mecha and Thunder King Mecha in front. At this moment, Li Yi in the cockpit had a certain amount of time when he drove the Pluto Mecha out of the upgrade pool, so he tried to take the time to enter the dream plane to see what those deep and dark memory fragments were. With his current ability, he could enter and exit the dream plane in an instant, and scan the memory fragments on the dream plane like a fleeting glance. It was just that when he saw it, he was slightly startled. He was not surprised by the content of the memory fragments, but by the total amount of memory contained in the memory fragments. One deep and dark memory fragment was equivalent to 30 or 40 memory fragments before. And on the dream plane, there were more than 100 dark memory fragments like this. He glanced over again, picked a larger memory fragment, and scanned the memory content on the outer layer. That second glance allowed him to see some material outlines that were obviously not human or alien. That familiar body image. Could it be an armored man? An armored man from the second era? Thinking of this, Li Yi's heart moved slightly. Are these the memories of the creation of the god-suppressing prison? Or are they memory fragments from the first or second era? Then are there any specific scenes of the destruction of each era recorded in these memory fragments? He didn't expect that when he accepted the blessing of Pluto, the main body of the god-suppressing prison, he could actually refresh such ancient memory fragments. It seems that the dream plane is not only able to refresh memory fragments related to itself. Maybe if certain conditions are met, it can also refresh more distant memories. I just don't know what conditions are required to refresh so long ago. Is it a large amount of high-quality divinity? Unfortunately, when he wanted to continue exploring, He Guangzi also sent a communication conversation. Li Yi, it seems that you have gained a lot. Tell me, how many conceptual characteristics have you come up with in total? Li Yi also knew that now was not the time to explore memory fragments. He could only wait until later to see if there were other mysteries hidden in it. He replied, I don't have a direct feeling of the conceptual characteristics yet. Maybe I have to experiment. He didn't know how other people benefited from the blessing of celestial bodies, so his answer was a bit conservative. He Guangzi said, it happens that there are still 5 minutes before Lao Lu comes over from the border star gate. Let's take this time to practice and let me see your amplification effect. How is it? Li Yu's eyes lit up. I couldn't ask for more. He was also worried that he needed an opponent to speed up his adaptation to the new control feel of this huge body. After the blessing of the celestial body this time, his own Pluto sequence divine genes have soared to 17, and each of them has a quality comparable to that made by A-level radiation, and the inherent characteristics are very amazing, far exceeding the divine genes made by the previous C-level radiation. In addition, the whole body has now reached 66 divine genes. That is, a total of 12 genes have been added this time, and the foundation of the physical body has also made a huge leap. He estimated that the pure physical strength has been raised from the previous 4th level to the 6th level. Now he no longer needs to condense the divine wings. Just by waving the air with his physical body, he can generate surging airflow and drive him to fly at high speed. Without any divine cooperation, he can already fly in the physical body, as fast as a fighter plane. Although he has not tried it, he has a strong confidence in his heart to do this. It's just a pity that the divine genes that have increased this time are not small, but the number of heavenly ranks surpassed is not as many as before. Although he had expected this, he still felt a little regretful. Generally speaking, the higher the heavenly rank, the greater the difference in foundation between ranks. Originally, he only needed 2 or 3 divine genes to surpass his opponent by one small level. But as the total number increases, he now needs 6 or 7 genes to surpass his opponent by one small level. It is estimated that the total number will double when he reaches the high level of the heavenly rank. After all, the normal 6th level has already condensed 2 divine cores, and has also obtained a large increase from condensing the characteristics of the heavenly rank 6 times, and the total strength is already high enough. The 7th level is a qualitative improvement, and is listed separately by the aliens and called a silver strong man. A fierce man like He Guangzi has the strength to break the D level and a small part of the C level mecha with his physical body. However, Li Yu has only accumulated a part of the amount at present, and his physical body has the strength comparable to the 6th level of the heavenly rank. When he starts to combine the 3 elements into one and condense the divine core in the later stage, the total increase will inevitably be higher. For those who are also accumulating the amount in the upper stage of the heavenly god mecha plan, the overall increase in strength is not as great as his. After all, no one is like Li Yi, who has broken through the limit twice and has a fighting realm that transcends an era. He has also gained the most physical enhancements in the inheritance spire, and has created multiple versions of explosive skills that only he can use. He Guangzi smiled and said, "Then let me try to see which of your Pluto sequence characteristics have reached the level of heavenly rank characteristics or even conceptual characteristics. If the quantity and quality are high enough, you can also consider creating your own heavenly rank tricks." As he spoke, the Thunder King Mecha stepped forward and attacked with his bare hands. Boom, boom, boom. He Guangzi is worthy of being praised as the second strongest person in the heavenly rank. At this moment, with a few casual steps, he showed an amazing speed that surpassed other high-level heavenly ranks, and in an instant he approached the Pluto Mecha. A punch, smashed down. This punch, the sound was like thunder, and the fist was accompanied by lightning. It was the starting move of the Thunder Light 13 punches. Li Yu controlled the Pluto Mech, and the subtle force was activated instinctively. This huge body moved lightly, fluttering like a butterfly, avoiding this swift punch. The 6-stage physical body still had some difficulty controlling the current Pluto Mech, so he immediately activated the original version of the burst skill to strengthen his body's endurance. At the same time, he was not in a hurry to contact the Thunder King Mech, but jumped to the other side and directly activated the Ice Prison feature. I saw that wherever the Pluto Mech passed by, it instantly emitted a large amount of cold air and surrounded the Thunder King Mech. Soon, the temperature of the surrounding environment plummeted rapidly. Countless frosts poured out, freezing the entire space like a frozen picture, and instantly stopped the activities of all things. Zhao He, who was watching the two people's competition not far away, immediately showed a look of surprise, his eyes wide open. This characteristic power is so powerful. He was knowledgeable and had defeated countless strong men, so he could naturally see the gold content of this characteristic power. Could it be that the freezing just now had the effect of freezing the space to some extent? This is the first characteristic that has such a performance. What about the other characteristics? Chapter 300 Force Field. Li Yu did not expect that the effect of the Ice Prison characteristic would be so good after it was activated. Not only the conventional physical freezing, but even the space showed signs of being frozen. It can transcend the conventional physical characteristics and directly form the effect of conceptual freezing. Isn't this the characteristic of the conceptual characteristic? Liu was pleasantly surprised. Now he has the conceptual characteristics. If he achieves the heavenly rank, won't the strength of the ice prison characteristic be even stronger? In the battle group, the actions of the Thunder King Mecha were obviously greatly restricted. Both the speed of action and the moving area are constantly shrinking. As the surrounding frozen environment gradually intensifies, the weakening power of the ice prison characteristic is constantly skyrocketing. However, this is just a characteristic after all. Although it is amazing, He Guangzi is the second strongest heavenly rank of mankind. After being restrained for only a few seconds, he suddenly launched other moves. I saw that the divine energy in the palm of the Thunder King Mecha suddenly gathered, and the purple-blue light circle continued to condense. Then, before the Pluto Mecha caught up, the divine energy group in the palm suddenly flashed. Boom! A huge shock wave exploded and spread in all directions. The frozen environment left by the ice prison characteristic was also pushed away by the shock wave, offsetting the high temperature. This shock wave contained an extremely amazing burning electric characteristic, as if countless high-speed and burning electric currents were flowing and tearing in the shock wave. It also had the characteristics of conceptual characteristics, and at the same time offset the weakening effect of the ice prison characteristic. This move was He Guangzi's own unique move of the heavenly position, the burning electric light breaking wave. The skills contained in it were the compression and rotation divinity skills he had taught Li Yi before, and the skills of superimposing the characteristics in the divinity and spreading and exploding that he had not yet taught. The combination of the two has an amazing control range and control accuracy, and can instantly strike any target within a range of 10 kilometers. Not only that, this move contains a combination of several heavenly position characteristics, and the power is obviously even greater when it is superimposed. Immediately, the Pluto Mecha was continuously moved backwards by this shock wave. Not only that, the outer layer of its armor also had countless crackling arcs flashing densely, bearing the scorching arcs brought by the invisible shock wave. In a moment, the outer armor of the Pluto Mecha showed a burning red color, emitting a faint white gas. Obviously, He Guangzi no longer thought of Li Yi as a junior at this time, and he did not hold back when he attacked. He knew that if he just used the characteristics of the heavenly position slowly and countered the moves, he could naturally have a wonderful exchange with a Pluto Mecha. But in this way, there was no way to see how deep Li Yi's progress was. He could clearly feel and firmly believe that Li Yi at this moment had almost reached the same level of combat power as him. Even if he was slightly inferior to him in various skills and experience of using the divinity. The situation would be completely different if the opponent's fighting skills were enough to beat him. In order to suppress Li Yi steadily, he had to use the heavenly position trick. At this moment, Zhao He also obviously saw He Guangzi's mentality of fighting with all his strength, and knew that He Guangzi's combat intensity was full at the beginning. He immediately became anxious and sent a message to He Guangzi, "Old He, why did you use a heavenly rank ultimate move right away? Don't hurt anyone by mistake." In response, He Guangzi just said, "Li Yi already had the ability to deal with high-level heavenly ranks before. It is impossible that he cannot resist my heavenly rank ultimate move when he has benefited so much now. Old He, you are different from other high-level heavenly ranks. Don't let young people who are full of excitement just after upgrading their rank suffer such a big failure. Deputy Director Zhao, you underestimate Li Yi too much? Just wait and see." He Guangzi casually hung up Zhao He's call, and at the same time, he murmured, Old Zhao, do you have a poor vision, or are you becoming more and more conservative as you get older?" He Guangzi complained about Zhao He, but in his heart, he was excited. He was looking forward to the duel with Li Yi. He Guangzi is a very proud person in his heart. He has never lost since his debut. He created a godlike fighting skill, the 13 Thunder Punches, and created many kinds of thunder and lightning sequence godlike fighting skills. His fighting power is amazing. Even when fighting against the strongest of the 400 meters, he is not inferior. He is quite strong. Now he sees a junior gradually growing up under his eyes and is about to show the potential of surpassing. How can he not feel the joy of seeing the prey in his heart? The lightning flashed outside the body of the Thunder King Mecha, and the huge body appeared behind the Pluto Mecha in the next second. There was a blue lightning in the fist, and it hit the Pluto Mecha silently. However, although this punch was hidden, Li Yu's observation ability naturally noticed it clearly. Immediately activated his other Pluto sequence characteristic, gravity. Boom. Before the dazzling electric light from the Thunder King X fist hit the Pluto mech, it strangely bent outwards, making an almost incredible 90-degree turn out of thin air and bounced to one side. Immediately afterwards, the Thunder King X impact was also reduced, and it was sucked over by the gravity on the side beside it. Good. The gravity characteristics also have the characteristics of the concept characteristics. He Guangzi in the cockpit was not nervous, but cheered and praised loudly. However, the next moment, the change occurred again. Whoosh! Countless air currents were also attracted by this gravity on the side of the Thunder King mech, and the pushing force suddenly increased. In a moment, the Thunder King mech was pulled away and deviated from its position, flashing from the back to the Pluto mech, and then showing from the back in front of the Pluto mech. The Pluto mech did not miss this opportunity, and directly used the tiger pounce style, and its body suddenly jumped forward. With this pounce, the outside of the huge body of the Pluto mech seemed to have a phantom of a supergiant tiger floating past. The Pluto mech's tiger pounce condensed an extremely powerful impact, like a mountain collapse. And there was even a sense of shocking space. It was Li Yu who superimposed the gravitational characteristics on the tiger pounce, making this move even more lethal. Boom. The Thunder King Mecha was directly hit on the back, and then turned into a cannonball and flew forward suddenly, actually using this to dissipate the impact. Li Yu could see clearly that when the Thunder King Mecha was hit on the back, an extremely fine lightning flame flashed at the same time, like a super electromagnetic field, generating an extremely powerful shielding force field, offsetting most of the power of the Pluto Mecha. Therefore, although the Pluto Mecha's attack was amazing and had the foundation to break the defense of the S-level Mecha, it still failed to leave any damage to the Thunder King Mecha. This electromagnetic force field is also one of Li Guangzi's heavenly tricks, with unparalleled physical and even conceptual defense. Even conventional conceptual characteristic attacks can be defended. However, even though he managed to defend himself, no one noticed that Li Guangzi in the cockpit also showed a look of shock on his face. That boy was really ruthless. He almost failed to defend against my electromagnetic field just now. Is the quality of this concept so high right after it was born? Or is it related to his Tiger Strike style? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.